There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Small Form Factor Network's live podcast reporting from Taipei, Taiwan. Super excited to be able to be online again, podcasting in a year and a half or something?
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been too long, let's be honest. It's been too long. In the room here, we have myself, Josh Ramirez, we have John Morrison, and joining us
is Alex Crapo.
An actual local.
Technically speaking.
Relatively recent.
We're just super excited to be able to essentially summarize what we've seen and done and experienced and all that fun stuff across Computex. This was a live broadcast. Obviously, we will be recording this and distributing it after the facts for folks who either can't join us or can't join us in whole or just want to re-listen to what we're going to be talking about. Feel free to look for that podcast. We'll have more information on the forum. In addition to that, I want to make sure we sort of take a moment to thank our sponsor for all of our Computex coverage this year, which is Silverstone. Silverstone's actually covered us a number of years now. This is sort of the third time that we've been to the show, and this has been the third time, likewise, they've actually provided support. Honestly, it's a great partnership. You know, Silverstone's done all sorts of great stuff for the SFF community, from really leading the way in development of SFX and SFXL power supplies to creating, chassis like I still remember the Sugo SGO5 server that I built a while ago, through to some of their recent product developments. Obviously things like the Nightjar 450 SFXL unit to the SFXL 1000 watt unit that they actually just announced at the show. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. We'd encourage you guys to either use links on our forum to go to their website to learn more about all the cool stuff that they sell, and we really appreciate their support.
Thank you.
Woo! So, we're going to keep the format for the show pretty loose. Really what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of, as best as we can, go through everything sequentially. So starting with day one and some of the conferences and events we did actually before the official start of the conference through to today. Really just going to harp on specific announcements and what certain companies are working on as they come to mind. And then we have sort of a very informal award ceremony near the end where we're going to talk through kind of some of the accolades that we want to bestow amongst those companies and otherwise that participated in Computex. And we'll explain a little more what we'll be doing there as we get to that segment. But to start, honestly, I kind of wanted to start actually with what may be the most impactful development that happened during Computex. Which was the AMD keynote that happened just ahead of it.
Yeah.
The show started with a bang. It's what happened. So, John, actually, you're the one of all the people in the room that was invited to.
I was lucky.
You were very lucky. You were actually in the room and were able to witness the conference, and I was hoping you could kind of get us started here.
Well, it's a difficult thing. It's, how to put it? I didn't actually think this through before we started. So.
That's okay.
My bad. It's been a long week. So we went into the event, I went into the event kind of expecting at least one launch. Like Ryzen 3000 was to be expected. Mm-hmm. We had some leaks beforehand. There was some relatively legit leaks, including knowing that we were going to get more cores. We weren't expecting one of the other reveals that they had and some other information that came out. So first up, I'll start with Ryzen 3000. Basically, it's a core bumped, clock bumped, wattage dropped, and cache bumped upgrade to Ryzen, the current generation of Ryzen. Mm-hmm. We've gone from 8 cores, 16 threads, all the way up to 12 cores, 24 threads on the same TDP.
And how they go about that, especially the 12 core chip is interesting. But we'll talk about that in a bit.
Oh, I can talk about that bit now because it's part of the architecture where at CES at the start of the year, they did announce that, when they showed the demo version of it, it was a single chiplet and the controller chip, and everyone freaked out thinking, there's space here for something else. And AMD was a little quiet about that. Turns out that space was for another chiplet.
That's right.
So we're the R9 3900X, I can't remember the exact clock speed, but it's close to 4 gigahertz base and over 4 boost.
According to their literature, 3.8 base, and then the boost goes up to 4.6.
Yeah. I think it had something like 70 megabytes of cache. like something insane.
I believe it's 64 meg of L3, 6 of L2.
There you go. So 70, which is.
I'm really
lot.
excited for that, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like Ryzen's architecture needs that extra memory.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they're also talking about a 15% IPC boost. So it's not just a
That-
clock bump; it's an IPC boost.
Mhm.
And gen on
That's what blew
gen,
my mind the
Yeah.
most, honestly.
generation on generation, 15% is a lot, especially considering how hard Ryzen was pushed.
Yeah.
The other thing as well is just sort of looking at, and I have the table in front of me so I can sort of cheat a little bit. But from the 3600 through to 3900X, we have a TDP range from 65 watt to only 105 watt of consumption for the 12 core like multi CPU chiplet design.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll want to see what the actual sort of behavior thermally and energy consumption wise will be as this gets in the hands of reviewers and we're able to perform robust testing. TDP can only count for so much nowadays.
It also depends on how you measure it.
Yeah, but in a sense, this isn't a surprise just given their ability to move to a new process node.
Well, that's the big thing. It is 7 nanometers.
Mm-hmm. However, from a performance efficiency standpoint, it's always very exciting when improvements are able to be made here, especially in the context of an environment where it really feels like the latest generation on both the CPU and GPU side. It's really been a degradation in terms of that sort of energy performance, thermal load.
Yeah.
I've definitely observed that.
We went through a fair bit of time where it was basically clock bump, and TDPs was going
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Which makes sense in terms of like physical properties.
Yeah.
Right? You're getting more performance. You're
Yeah,
using
and
more
when you're
power.
stuck on a process node, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that we're finally having something that kind of bucks that trend in a way while
Yeah.
still being able to realize.
Yeah, that
It's
is
really
something I
strong
think about
IPC.
a lot too. So I'm excited to see that.
Of course, most revolutionary, at least to me, is the price, right?
Yeah.
So for a 12, think about this, right? It's the consumer desktop socket, but for a 12-core, 24-threaded CPU, right? $499.
Yeah.
$499
On a
There's
desktop
just so
platform,
much
which is going
about
to be
this
cheap.
that you can get excited about.
I actually don't even know what the cheapest way to get 12 cores would have been the day before, but it must have been at least twice as expensive. I mean, you wouldn't have even been able to do it within the consumer class
no.
socket.
You could do like secondhand enterprise
Yeah,
stuff.
you would end up with dual socket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the boards and stuff can get expensive.
Yeah.
And it's not like meant for gaming or anything like that. It's not meant for a
The
consumer.
clock,
really.
the clock speeds there are much, much lower
Yeah.
because they've got that's the TDP thing. Speaking of TDP, the shock was they actually released a 8-core with a 65 watt TDP.
Yep. That would be the 3700X, I believe.
So 8 cores and something that can be called by an NHL9i or L9A, sorry.
Oh, I hadn't even considered that.
Yeah, that is an 8-core 16-thread processor that can be called in an S4 Mini.
Yeah, and performance pretty good. It's a 3.6 gigahertz base up to 4.4 boost.
I think they compared it to the 9900K in benchmarks on the presentation.
Yeah, they had a number.
Which is a big chip.
They had a number of demos just showing both single and multi-threaded performance across all these parts. And that was actually important because, obviously one of the benefits of Ryzen early on was the fact that it just tended to be wider than comparable Intel chips at a price point of view. So you tended to basically get more cores, which is great, but only for the specific workloads in which those were beneficial.
Right.
Really the main point of contention or differentiation has been that it's wider on the AMD side with the IPC performance, so the per core performance tended to be better on the Intel side.
Yeah.
AMD really went out of their way to emphasize, with this generation that they really felt that they had essentially arrived at parity, if not marginally better per core performance against Intel, driven primarily by all the IPC improvements they've been able to make, which of course is entirely separate from either core count or the process node enabling them to drive up efficiency as well. So there were a few demos where they really, charts and things where they really wanted to emphasize that they felt like that their architecture and that their core design was really basically on the same stage as what Intel has had now. Obviously we'll see what benchmarks and whatnot.
I'm excited to see some real numbers.
Not just AMD curated ones.
Yeah. But, needless to say, I mean, if more or less, they're proven to be correct in what they're asserting here, given the fact that they are providing the wider, better value architecture, and given the fact that certainly from an efficiency point of view, the process node alone is going to hand them that.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big deal.
I mean, I've been wanting to buy a Ryzen processor for a while now, but I've been like, well, it's a little bit slower. So like, if it's even closer now, I'm just like, I see no reason not to finally, buy in.
Well, if the numbers that we're seeing are correct and AMD isn't just fudging the numbers a little bit, as any manufacturer is likely to do.
Yeah.
It's almost as if this is almost a death sentence for the HEDT segment. It's like, what's going to happen with Threadripper now?
It does put it in this awkward in-between because it's sort of... I mean, I get why Intel created that segment, right? Like, they were trying to essentially bifurcate the market and say, oh, well, at these really high core counts, you have professional users or like enthusiast users where you can probably charge them, a premium, not just for the actual CPU, but for the chipset and everything surrounding that architecture, particularly given that they probably want more lanes to complement all of that compute power. But already I would say that the popularity or overall success of that segment has been kind of, lacking in a certain way.
Well, it's partly in fact, but that Intel is very good at gimping your PCI Express lanes, whereas AMD is like, have them all.
Well, yeah, because I don't think AMD gates them
they
on
don't
any of their sockets anymore.
Their bottom end Threadripper has the same amount of lanes as the top end, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I think Ryzen... The new generation Ryzen's got 40 lanes or something?
That sounds correct.
The
PCI
current gen of Ryzen, I think, was mostly held back by the chipset.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming because they wanted to lower the cost of their boards or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got, how would I put it? We've got a situation where ASRock at least has come up with a micro ATX board that has 2 full X16 PCI Gen 4 slots.
Man.
Full X16, not X8, X8, full 16 on both slots at PCI 4. I want it.
That is insane.
Because that is like the new generation of the board that I'm already running, because I've got a B450 M Pro 4, which is the same kind of layout and... And the other thing is that one of the users in the chat just mentioned, where the 12-core 24 thread is actually not the top end. Because if it's chiplet design, you can expect 16 cores, 32 threads, because 2 chiplets would be that.
Yeah, so actually this is one of the questions I'd written down, which was that, the chiplet design allows multiple dies, this is 2, but if you have 8-core ones, that's 6. So presumably what they're doing is they're essentially taking chiplets with 8 cores, deactivating 2, maybe some binning, to get the high performance for those cores that remain. But yeah, theoretically... They have this literal space for it because a 16-core chiplet design would use the same chiplets just without deactivating those cores.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something that they're intending to just release later on, or
it could be that they're holding off on announcing it just so that they can bin enough good chips and do
the last thing you want at launch is supply issues
and do some sort of anniversary edition type thing. Maybe not specifically that, but a special edition.
The other question I have, especially when we speculate about this, but even in a world where Ryzen provides a 12-core CPU, is what is the future of Threadripper as an option in architecture in this new world where all of a sudden we already have pretty darn high core count options at the consumer level? I mean, the price sort of outlays, kind of makes sense, and across all of it is still certainly below what Intel's offering, at least right now. But certainly the need for most people, most circumstances, 12 is plenty. I mean, you're even future-proofed. I mean, we can have an argument about democratizing high core count will enable or encourage software developers to actually leverage that more than they already have. But I mean, who the heck? I'm not going to recommend to most people I know that they need anything more than a 12-core count CPU. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I can see a couple of niche cases at the top of the market, and they can afford HEDT. The motherboards is probably the defining factor now. The ability to run 8 DIMMs would probably be the only side of it, and quad channel.
I do think it's that kind of feature, or PCI lanes are going to be the real dictating factor of someone choosing to go for a higher end platform HEDT type thing.
Yeah,
because they've also got higher end IO.
Yeah, and even 2 gigabit or 10 gigabit network ports or something.
Well, I would say they're more likely to have Thunderbolt, but let's be honest, ASRock just did the unthinkable, which we will talk about later on.
Yeah,
that's right. Next, different segment. In terms of other features, obviously PCIe 4.0.
Yeah.
So I think this will be... Is this the first consumer platform to support
AMD
PCIe
is
4?
first to GPU and CPU with Gen 4.
Okay. Yeah. So really, all super helpful. All still using the AM4 socket, but...
Speaking of the socket, the kind of pitch about the AM4 socket was that it would last for a really long time. Yeah. But one kind of unfortunate side effect of this Computex for AMD is that old boards probably aren't going to cut it going forward for most.
No, I think the deal with that is that AMD went a little far with the next generation, because the BIOS code and even the power phases and the throughput of some of these cheaper older boards are just not going to cope. Like, there's going to be there'll be some 300 series and definitely a lot more 400 series boards that will cope. But to be honest, with the promise of PCI Gen 4, all of these new different peripherals and upgrades, it's almost worth it's time to upgrade.
Right, and to that effect, what I wanted to the question I wanted to take out of that is, do you think Ryzen 2 or this generation of Ryzen boards are going to be sort of the future-proof AM4 boards?
It's hard because AMD did quote upgrade through 2020.
Yeah,
I mean we're halfway through 2019. So we could have AM5 next, but I kind of, knowing AMD and knowing their upgrade cycles when it comes to sockets, I'm pretty sure we've got at least 2 more years of this.
That's kind of what I would imagine too.
Especially with such a big jump and still being able to use the same platform, it makes sense on a not screwing your board partners over and consumers over, which AMD's a lot nicer to their board partners than some other companies I can think of.
It's a short list.
Yeah.
It also just comes down to what would be the improvements or features in subsequent revisions that would necessitate a different socket for whatever reason.
Yeah, right? That's a good point.
Most of the time, that comes down to a preference towards more pins because you need more lanes or you want more features or something like that. In a world with Threadripper, it feels like they've kind of segregated people who want that sort of expandability. Yeah. Or maybe they want a tighter footprint or something like that. Just like a change in the design of the pins themselves. So... I don't know that AMD necessarily feels a pressure to make a change to that, but obviously AM4 has persisted for a while now.
Yeah.
I can't even think what even approaches the length of time that socket has been used.
AM3 was around for a while, but then it was AM3 plus. Slot 1 was around for ages. Socket 370 was around for ages.
Yeah.
I think as one of the users in the Slack Discord, mentioned LGA 775 was around for a long time. There was 2 different generations of that. There was Pentium-based and core-based, but the socket stayed around for a while. It's hard. So I think we've come across a time where the leading chip manufacturer was changing socket every 2 generations.
Yeah.
And we got used to that. And we had upgrade your board every 2 years.
Well, and also just a coexistence of so many sockets at the sort of consumer and semi-professional level. If you ask me to list them all on the Intel side, I don't know that I could do it.
I could. But that is my job.
Yeah, fair.
I do like that there wasn't a clear sequence of going from 1150 or 1151 to 1150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that just threw me for a loop every time.
And then you've got the weird side CVHEDT.
Yeah.
Because it was 1356.
Yeah, so that you could have the Core 9 or whatever.
Yeah.
No, that was previous to that.
Okay.
That was previous design. And then you had 1156, 1155, and then suddenly down to 1151.
Yeah.
And then 1150 now.
Yeah.
What's next gen? 1149?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
1057? I don't know.
Yeah. You do bring a good point about pins though, because we are with 40 PCI Express lanes plus. I think someone in the chat mentioned there's also another. There's more lanes for M.2. We're starting to run into limitations with the amount of pins versus the amount of PCI lanes and other I/O.
That's an interesting point.
And the other side of it is, it's PGA 1338, I believe. That's a lot of pins. And you can't really get much more dense than that. Just look at the size of it. They might have to move to an LGA format further in the future because you can get so many more pins on it. I mean, Intel's got LGA 3647
Yeah.
as their high-end server deal.
I
I
never
think so.
considered that.
Yeah. PGA 1331 is AM4.
Yep.
It's, I mean, LGA 2066 or 2011, like, you can get so many more pins in such a small space.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been great that AMD's stuck to the same platform because it means coolers have been relatively long-lived, especially if they're using the spring clip mechanism that hangs onto the two hooks.
Mm-hmm.
You could run a socket 754 cooler on an AM4 CPU. Like, that's a long time to own a CPU cooler.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Cool.
Or,
So, are there any other? So, I'm just reading some reporting here. Are there any other features that we should cover in terms of the new 3000 series Horizons?
the only thing would be the X570 chipset being 11 watts and needing a fan.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fair point.
We're back to needing a chipset fan.
And we'll probably cover this when we discuss some of the motherboards that are going to be sort of launching either
Don't get me
alongside or subsequent to the launch of the Ryzen,
Yeah.
which, for those who either don't remember or don't know, I believe is July 7th.
7th. So AMD's doing a full launch of Navi, which we'll come to, and excuse me, the next generation Ryzen on the 7th of July. So both 7nm chips, and it's going to be launched on the 7th of the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
So numbers.
7, 7, 19. Darn.
Oh yeah. I forgot what year it was.
We've had conversations with a variety of manufacturers and board partners who all seem to be having or will have a slate of motherboards available pretty much immediately following launch, which is a good thing. But like I said, we'll probably end up discussing that in a later section. I do want to pivot a little bit. Obviously, the Ryzen 3000 is kind of the most interesting portion of their event, but it wasn't even the only thing that they discussed. There were kind of... I was watching the stream, so I'll sort of defer to John, but during the keynote presentation that Lisa Su gave, there were sort of 3 sections to the presentation they gave. They sort of ended on some of the Ryzen stuff, but there was some development and discussion of their next generation graphics architecture. And I figured that would be sort of the second most relevant thing for us to discuss. Was that in like the middle of the presentation? I think if I'm remembering correctly.
Could I actually like hang back to the chipset thing for like one
more
point? Is I think the reason that's being upgraded the way it is so that they can support PCI Gen 4. That's mostly because they were talking about you can like RAID NVMe drives and like not bottleneck.
Ooh.
And so the thing about it is if you're not actually RAIDing NVMe drives and not bottlenecking them, are you actually going to consume that much power with the chipset?
Yeah, it's 11 watt at full load. So to be honest, I'm expecting it's going to, hopefully with board fan profiles, they'll actually be good and actually have silent mode.
Yeah, I'm kind of assuming that most of them, and this is just an assumption, but I would assume that most of them would actually be passively cooled for the most part.
Yeah.
Even though the fans are there.
I would say when you're doing like computationally heavy workloads, or not even that, just throughput heavy, so to memory and to the PCI Express, and like obviously we can't tell yet.
But it's not like just doing a standard workload today would tax a chipset more than it normally does.
No.
Like just playing games on your computer shouldn't make your chipset need a fan.
Yeah. Well,
that's just what I'm thinking.
Yeah, we'll just have to see how it goes to the launch.
But I just wanted to kind of throw that out there on the chipset fans.
Fair point.
Because a lot of people are like, whoa.
It's going to be loud. We're going to go
so crazy.
We're going to go back to the day of Pentium D and or Prescott where the fan was spinning at full speed the whole time.
Yeah.
Back in my day.
Yeah, it's been interesting because while we've been on the floor, through Discord or otherwise, folks have asked us like an impression as we've been looking at some of these partner boards, like how they've implemented their cooling solutions. And it varies, based on manufacturer. Some do them well, some kind of look ugly or just plain stupid.
To put it nicely.
Again, don't get me started.
Obviously there's sort of the open question of what the noise profile is going to be on some of these things. I mean, I think we've been conditioned to, whenever we see a tiny fan, to just kind of quiver in fear a little bit.
And be honest, it could just be a gentle breeze. Those fans are needed. It might just be that little kick.
I gotta imagine that the RPM on that's gonna be pretty low,
because
right?
it's 11 watts.
Right. It's really only just beyond the threshold where you can get away with entirely passive cooling.
I know of memory modules that run hotter than that.
Yeah.
Previous generation, but server FB DIMMs run it. Yeah. They get toasty.
I'm not personally worried, but obviously, we'll learn more as reviews come out and we get hands on boards. Mm-hmm. At a minimum, I mean, there's going to be choice across a whole slate of board partners and the products they have. So if, one manufacturer finds their own solution to be especially problematic, it should be easy for consumers to learn that and avoid it accordingly.
Right.
Well, before we go full hog into the next stuff that we're going to talk about, you kind of skipped over the first part of the presentation, which was Epic.
Oh, of course. Yes, this is the third part of the presentation. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
it's the first of three.
Not as relevant to us. Well, our particular niche. However, a lot of people in our community will be IT specialists. Mm-hmm. And just how successful Epic is being and how far Rome will take it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, so we could get another MATX Threadripper board.
Well, this is Epic, so...
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, but Epic... what's the word for it? Trickles down to Threadripper.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe next gen Threadripper we will see 64 cores, 128 threads on possibly a micro ATX board with 8 TIMs. Jesus.
That would be spicy.
Yeah, it's interesting. But the other side of it is that AMD is working with Cray, who's now owned by HPE, or Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and they're working to build the world's fastest supercomputer at like 1.45 exaflops.
Jeez.
And it's going to be 2020.
I don't even know what that means.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
I can't imagine leveraging that for anything.
Yeah, it's a spicy meatball.
Yeah. I mean, but taking a step back though, Enterprise has really been Intel's home and golden goose in a lot of respects. Yeah. I think, it's been interesting. Obviously, AMD has a prerogative to really talk up sort of the relationships with all sorts of companies, So they were speaking towards, I think, like Microsoft and a few others who provide these sort of compute in other enterprise platforms.
Yeah.
Already we've seen, market penetration in terms of hosting provider and compute services. So AWS, DO, other providers are all offering a product that, is essentially underlying all of that, the Epic architecture.
Yeah.
And AMD is really going for what they know they can attack Intel with, which is price performance. Right?
And more cores. Just more cores.
Exactly. Just make it super wide, reasonable performance at a very, very good price. And, certainly Intel's left a ton of room for AMD to be able to do this. Yeah. But, I gotta be honest, at the end of the day, I think we're at a point now where really most of the innovation or most of the exciting stuff that can happen in that space right now is when the out-of-pocket cost of access to this compute goes down. Yeah. At the end of the day, just being able to get more performance for less cost is really what most people care about, what most people are sensitive to. It's where most of sort of innovation exists. They can do all sorts of things architecturally and on a per unit basis, just make it super wide or just have an incredible number of lanes. So you have, huge amount of memory or lots of expandability or whatnot. But at the end of the day, performance and price kind of dictate the terms for everything else. All other things are secondary. And so, to that end, yes, maybe this doesn't directly affect me in a personal way just because I only use these services so much. On the other hand, though, my hope, and we'll see what Intel's response is to Epic as an architecture, but my hope is that this is sort of the rising tide that lifts all boats, right? That this really sort of kicks the industry to gears a whole and kind of continues that trend of downward cost associated with being able to get sort of this high performance in enterprise context.
Yeah, or an increase in value maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're filling out an entire data center, value for money is semi-important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there are going to always be the clients or consumers who just don't care about price.
They want cores, they want performance.
Yeah, but I think there's a much larger demographic that does care about the value they're getting.
Yeah, it's data centers are more about performance per rack unit
Yeah, because it's normally like sort of a leased service,
Yeah. So that was the first part, and then
Second was Ryzen.
Yep, and then third was Navi.
Navi, yeah.
Yes. So this is almost an equivalently interesting portion of their presentation. Obviously, maybe not quite as I don't know if the word is like dramatic, impactful. I'm not sure.
It was unexpected.
Yeah, a little unexpected.
But it's
So
obviously AMD's been using GCN or Graphics Core Next, I believe it's called, for over a decade, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very long in the tooth and has so many issues. So the Vega 7 card that was released at CES, CES or was it Computex last year?
Vega
7, no, it was CES.
Yeah, I believe so.
That was a full-on Vega card, so therefore it was GCN.
Correct.
So at this event, AMD released their first Navi card, which is the RX 5700 5000 series, because 50th anniversary of AMD being a company.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, I'll get back to this, but they started at the 700. But that card performs about the same, going by the small amount of benchmarks that we've had so far, as that Radeon 7. But it's a new architecture called RDNA. Well, going by what I've read so far in the chat this afternoon, is that it's kind of a blend between RDNA and GCN.
Mm-hmm.
But it's mostly RDNA at this point. And it's offering 1.5 times performance per watt and 1.25 times performance per clock. So if you average that out, that's like, 1.6, 1.7 times better than GCN, which means that they're basically just the card that they released in January is now completely obsolete. Well done.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, again, we're talking about a process node as well as an architectural.
Well, Radeon 7 nanometer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I believe what probably happened is that there was two graphics teams working in the Radeon Technologies group, and they just had to get the last product out before they moved to the new generation.
That probably was a big factor.
Yeah, they just had to have something, because right now they're getting their butt handed to them by NVIDIA.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I mean, I think most of the frustration around that has just been the fact that AMD for a while now hasn't really had an answer for like the top tier class of consumer GPUs.
Yeah.
I think that was mostly down to the limitations of GCN. GCN just did not have anything left in it.
Mm-hmm.
They beat that horse till...
I mean, to be fair, this announcement is kind of a continuation of that trend, right? So they announced Navi RX 5700, and we're talking like RX 2070 class of performance, which is fine, which is great, and is enough for a lot of people. I don't know that we got pricing.
I don't remember offhand.
I don't think so. Yeah. But also, again, like, this is not top tier performance.
No, as I mentioned before, they started at the 5700, which leaves 5800, 5900, and obviously you had the 2070 equivalent as the 5700, so that leaves in one's mind that it is possible that they could have something that could answer the 2080 Ti.
One would
maybe
hope.
Yeah, indeed. Maybe in Q1, but the problem is if they hit that in Q1, what's NVIDIA got in Q1?
Right.
Like, they will go, NVIDIA will have something like, they've got the super
like
thing
a
that they keep, they have the super thing they keep mentioning. The rumored pricing for the 5700 is going to be, there's two versions.
Okay.
There's Navi XT at $499 and Navi Pro at $399 US.
Okay. Yeah, that would be about what I would expect. Yeah.
And what is the 2070 currently sitting at?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, it's
just pulling up Newegg.
NVIDIA's MSRP is $600. According to their website.
But you can get it for for close to
I would say
$500.
it's probably $500 again. So it's going to be price competitive.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like it's in the ballpark.
Yeah, I see one on Amazon for $500.
Yeah. But it's not really eclipsing.
But the one thing we didn't get is pure numbers. So we didn't get a pure wattage number.
Yeah.
Is it going to be the same or less than the 2070 in the wattage department? Because that is a big deal.
Well, so one of the things that is known because of the fact that they've moved to 7 nanometer FinFET, I'm reading an article that sort of suggests that it is estimated that the actual die size of the RX 5700 is around half that of the 20.
Oh yeah, it's tiny. Lisa Su held it up on stage. It looks,
that's right.
It looks like a low-end GPU.
Right, so one would hope that for that reason alone, like it would be pretty damn hard for that to be worse, certainly from a consumption.
Especially.
I mean, if anyone can find a way to do that, it's AMD, don't get me wrong. But one would hope that efficiency would be one of the things that separate this design from the 2070 cards on the NVIDIA side of things. It is interesting that they didn't really speak to it, because you would think that if they really had made huge strides in this area, that they'd be keen to brag about it.
I get the feeling it might be equivalent. I mean, Turing and that generation's all on 12 nanometer FinFET.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's unfortunate that AMD's video cards tend to have like really good value at the middle and below segment, but even I'm guilty of this. Whenever you see that NVIDIA has like the highest end products, even when you go to a lower price bracket, it's like, well, NVIDIA still makes the very best, so I'm going to get an NVIDIA. Like, I just have that thought process in my head.
It's a great marketing thing, and that's why high-end products exist.
Yeah.
You've always got your glory products.
Yeah.
You've always got your GTR, for example. You've always got your Turbo something or other.
Yeah, but also some people just want that level of performance.
But
And
what I'm really trying to say is, it'd be awesome if AMD ended up being able to go blow for blow at the high end of video cards,
Yeah.
That's.
I'm hopeful that they can get there. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's been a while since AMD's been able to compete on performance per watt. Basically since GCN, they've been behind on performance per watt on every single generation.
Yeah.
I think the last generation they're actually competitive on performance per watt was the last 5000 series.
Maybe that's what they're doing here.
Well, yeah, because the HD 5000 series, like the 5770, the 5790, 5970, they were good cards for the day. And I remember having one of the first proper SFF gaming cards was a low profile 5750, which is great.
Yeah, I was out of the loop around that time.
Kids these days.
I mean, it was just like my friend would tell me what video card to buy, and I would buy it.
You have to learn.
I almost hope that they do, though, because they could, and it would be ridiculous, but it would be great. And I love this card, even though it was ridiculous when it came out. Do you guys remember the R9 295X2?
Yeah, the New Zealand.
Yeah, that's right.
That was codename New Zealand.
That's right. It was.
I won one just because it was codename New Zealand.
It was ridiculous. I mean, it was this monster. Have you seen this card?
I don't think so.
Okay, Google it. R9 295X2.
Yeah.
It was It was a multi GPU on one graphics card.
Yeah.
I think I have. Okay.
It was this monstrous thing, and it was so power hungry. It was just too much.
I think it had three 8
had
pins.
like a built-in.
It had 3 8 pins. And it had such a high power consumption that they couldn't even, there was only the reference design available. But the reference design itself was on a AIO water loop. Like, there was no way that they were going to keep that at two PCI slots with 2 GPUs, get the performance they wanted, and have it not, melt inside your enclosure. I
kind of want AMD just to throw, go balls to the wall and actually just throw out this one-off demo card. Just go absolutely nuts. So here's dual Navi at as fast as we can get it underwater.
Yeah,
for example, maybe E3 is a good event for something like that.
Well, that's the thing. We are talking E3 generally is better for graphics cards.
Well, also it's just that would be an obnoxious show of force.
Well, because Nvidia generally launches their new stuff at E3, which is why we're expecting the super stuff now at E3.
Yeah.
So if AMD came out with this dual obnoxious card, just it's a dual GPU, but it's about 1.5 times faster than your Titan. I know, dreaming here, but.
Yeah, and then Exploding Waffle on the Discord does point out that there is a Radeon, I think it's the Pro Duo.
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, which is a multi-GPU solution. So this actually technically does exist on a modern architecture.
That is still GCN, though.
It is.
Yeah, that is not Navi.
It is not. But architecturally, similar things. So see, AMD, you can do this.
Yeah.
You can do this. I mean, look,
Like you're talking to Lisa right
That's
now.
right. I'm telegraphing. I'm like, come on, because here's the thing. Like the 295X2 was a ridiculous card. Like you just couldn't help but laugh at it because it just looked stupid, right?
It attracted so much attention.
Not only that, but like for what it was great, right? It was like, yes, it's this monstrosity, and this is like a ridiculous, inelegant solution to the problem. Like this card is laughable. And yeah, it was also like kind of awesome, like from a performance price point of view, especially at the time.
Yeah.
Nothing could approach it. Like it was an awesome solution.
There are some people who put 4 in a system.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, 2 in a
Two in
system.
a
Because
system.
you can go quad crossfire.
Yeah,
which
with
is-
2 cards. But like, and I remember, and you know, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Linus videos, they're just not for me. But like, he had a video where he actually kind of went to AMD's defense. He's like, honestly, this is like the best example of like an enthusiast GPU card, because it's like, this is AMD saying like, with what we have in front of us, this is what we can make.
Yeah.
Where it's like performance is the only priority, and we will compromise everything else to get there.
Well, it's been a while since we've seen a card like that, where it's just going nuts on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see some motherboard manufacturers just go nuts and put out some really crazy ass product, and it just turns into something really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
ASRock, for example, with the X299 EITX,
Yes.
like quad SODIMs and LGA 2066 on
On
an
an
ITX board.
ITX.
And yeah, it probably didn't sell particularly well, and it probably doesn't have that much of an uptake, but it's a glory product, and like it enables these engineers to get a little bit more, like, they get more skilled at things and making things more optimized, which is what we're about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe something will develop. I mean, as we've said before, like it feels like, I mean, and they talked up a lot, you know, this sort of Navi card, which obviously sort of sits in the middle from a performance point of view, but it feels like they've given themselves room for, you know, a little more development above that tier. I mean, I don't know
I'm
what
expecting a higher end card in Q1.
I hope so, man.
I'm expecting an 800 or a 900 in Q1.
Yeah. I mean, is there a reason why they couldn't do it? Doesn't feel like there is.
I get the feeling they just had to launch now.
Yeah.
That's why they
something
couldn't-
out as soon as possible.
Yeah, they
right?
couldn't quite get the 800 reliable enough for mass production, which happens. I mean, it takes time to develop these products, and especially with GCN being such like the stalwart of AMD's GPU stable.
Yeah.
It's taken a while for them to just like, okay, time to take you out the back of the shed.
Oh. Well, on that note, are there any other elements of the AMD keynote you guys want to talk through before we move on? Or
I do appreciate Lisa Su's one more thing.
oh god,
Because one more thing, it always means there's something amazing coming, and that was the 3900X this time, which
That's
is the
right.
12-core 24-thread.
that's right. They,
At 105 watts, come on.
and $499.
Yeah,
Under
like,
$500, you could have 12 core.
I'm buying one.
Yeah.
I've already decided I'm getting that CPU.
I'm basically there. I just can't let myself not see benchmarks before I do.
Yeah,
it,
it's
you
true.
know?
It's true.
Well, the thing is, I've been running Ryzen, first-gen Ryzen
That's
for
fair, yeah.
about a year now as my main desktop on Micro ATX. And
I'm
it's
definitely
been,
overdue for an upgrade.
for the value proposition, because I'm a relatively value-oriented person because I'm poor. It's just what it offers and what the capabilities are.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I needed to get an equivalent Intel system. I probably would have spent another 25%.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to with
Yeah.
like, the cost of the motherboard.
And just to
is
get
very easy
especially
to.
the cost of the motherboards, because the
Yeah.
the motherboard that I've got it's a business
basically
level.
top of the line. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's a business one. It's cheaper, but it's also top of the line for the specs. Cause
Yeah,
it's got
compared in smaller. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
yeah. For one of the users in the chats, value-oriented person equals cheapskate. Yes, I am. Well done.
You're not.
It's like the nice way of saying that. Yeah.
You're not cheap. You're frugal.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
It's been 45 minutes of AMD. Next.
Yes, exactly. So, and we'll obviously talk more
Well,
about this
the
because we'll
thing-
be getting into the boards too.
Yeah, I'm going to take the next segment. The reason why it's been 45 minutes of AMD and nothing of anyone else.
Is this our segue?
Yeah.
My word, I sat on the NVIDIA keynote and went to their HQ to go see what was going on, and what a whole lot of nothing. I mean, yeah, they launched their studio program, which is a certification thing, which is basically a $100 sticker on your laptop because it can do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, it's like the concept of it's cool, but it's the same thing as like G-Sync versus FreeSync.
Yeah.
It's just a sticker to have their approval.
And then you got Intel, who launched the 9900KS just before the event, which is basically a clock bumped 9900K, and that's all they had. Like,
it was already kind of like lacking in relevance in a post-Ryzen.
It was made obsolete within half an hour, hour of launch.
Yeah.
I mean, AMD's keynote happened before, right?
No, Intel did launch it just before the keynote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was pretty unlucky.
No, I do believe they were trying to like one up AMD, not realizing for the second time what AMD actually had up its sleeve.
Yeah, I mean,
this is a second time that I had to use the reference, but Linus did a rant in the rain.
Yeah.
And when Linus does a rant in the rain on YouTube, Intel had a bad day. A really bad day.
I mean, yeah, I guess from Intel's point of view, they're like, let's blunt whatever it is that they're announcing.
Yeah.
But like, it almost backfired in a way because the perception, it's just a perpetuation of the perception among a lot of folks that like, Intel's really phoning it in or isn't doing a good job of addressing the fact that
Intel has been on the back steps since Ryzen 1.
I mean,
and it's been really funny to watch because they've been Nvidia-ing the market for over a decade now.
Yeah.
Another verb I really shouldn't use.
I mean, it just okay. So Intel didn't really have much going on. At least nothing of particular relevance to us. Nvidia, it's sort of interesting to me. I feel like more what they were. So there's this sort of like software suite almost, and some of these new sort of branded laptops. Like to me, it was almost more like a branding strategy rather than a feature set per se, right? Mm-hmm. So this is sort of their indication that, they are now prioritizing like professional use in a mobile context as a defined category of users that they're going to try and design specifically for moving ahead. But, nothing new in terms of hardware, right? So this is everything that sits on top of that that's really changed.
Well, I'm not going to shoot them down on the hardware side of things. Like, some of the demonstrations are amazing. Live ray tracing on a laptop is pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to go back to AMD for a moment here. There was a representative from Microsoft on the stage with Lisa about partway through the event, and from Microsoft's perception, from new PC and laptop sales, AMD is back at 50%, which is huge.
That's insane.
Yeah. 50%. Like, considering where they were, say 4 years ago, they were at 5 or 10.
Yeah.
It made no sense to buy AMD because that was the bulldozer era and the bulldozer era.
Yeah.
It was a hard time to be an AMD fan.
3 years ago was still not a good time.
Yeah. Even 3 years ago because it was Computex. It was our first Computex that they launched Ryzen.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's right.
I mean, we had leaks and we kind of knew what was coming, but considering it's
like
really
ground zero.
It's really hard to describe how much of a sea change it was for that company.
Yeah,
I love how in the Intel and Nvidia segment we're still discussing AMD.
I guess that's a testament.
Exactly, that's the thing. It speaks to the environment.
There was literally nothing to talk about the other two. Like especially for our niche, there was nothing.
It's kind of going off that.
One second. I got a sore butt sitting at the NVIDIA conference. By the way, NVIDIA, next time, more comfy seats, please. And for a whole lot of nothing. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So did Intel do anything about their GPUs, or is that still like in the shop?
No. Yeah.
That's still in the shop. And apparently, I've heard through the grapevine that Raj, who moved there from AMD, is not doing so well on the whole company perception kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, because Raj was the proponent and the reason why GCN lasted so long.
Yeah.
That was his baby.
Yeah.
Now that he's gone, AMD is like, finally we can go into this new thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping Intel comes up with something. It would be great to have a third competitor in the market.
That's what I'm most excited for with them entering this space.
Yeah, I'm honestly, first gen card, I'm only expecting at most 750 Ti or 1050 Ti performance.
My expectations aren't high. I was just hoping to hear something to maybe have things shake up a little more because things have been pretty green for a while now in the GPU market.
Yeah, I mean, it takes time.
Yeah.
I agree with John that, I would think certainly at least to start, Intel would probably be wise and prudent to sort of stick to entry-level discrete graphics performance, if only because,
That's
honestly,
their market anyway.
That's their market. That's what most people would.
I would
want
expect
to read
that,
anyway.
or like the crazy like server quadro type card,
sure.
like workstation oriented.
Well,
stuff.
they did that with I think it was Knightsbridge and Knight's Landing, and it was kind of.
Well,
not
I
as great
haven't
as
heard
it should
those
have.
names before, but I like
sorry.
the names.
It's I am both an SFF nut and a server nut, so I'm kind of I have things in that side, and that's kind of a server thing. It's a compute card, and it was good, but it had its drawbacks compared to what Nvidia and a little bit AMD had to offer at the time for GPU compute. It was not that great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Xeon Phi was another one, which is another interesting card. I mean, they're really cool technology, but these system integrators and these server builders are not going to spec something that doesn't perform as well as what you could buy for maybe even less.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the thing we mentioned with AMD, where it's like there are people who care about the very, very, very best, and that's what matters. But then everybody else cares about the value they're getting.
Yeah.
So if you're not one of those things, like
basically everyone's a cheapskate, just like you, John.
Yeah, 90% of people who go into their local Best Buy or whatever to go buy a laptop or a desktop are going to go for the best value for money, or probably just most likely the cheapest one.
Yeah.
Can I do email?
When it comes to like average consumer,
can I do email on YouTube? Yes. Okay, you had that as well.
What can I do? YouTube in 4K.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of cool with AMD is coming with the APUs in the next generation, but that's still rumors at this point. I'm not going to go any further into.
Yes.
We've talked enough about AMD.
Okay.
We've been recording for 50 minutes. We're still talking about AMD.
I'll stop.
Well, is there anything else we want to cover?
They did, in all honesty, mic drop for this.
Yeah, no, it was the best possible start to the conference.
Yeah. I was very happy that I was actually in the room. And I met a couple of cool tech YouTubers as well, like Wendell from Level 1 Techs.
Yeah.
Which is, he is as cool in real life as he is on video. As knowledgeable.
So are there any things we want to cover in addition on the Intel or NVIDIA front? I mean, obviously not much happened there comparatively.
There wasn't anything, so no. I mean, I went to the AMD and NVIDIA, and Intel never responded to my application for their keynote. Mm-hmm. Fuck you, Intel. Suddenly PG rating on the podcast. Sorry about that. Yeah, AMD was the only one that had anything.
Yeah, and it was their time. I mean, it was the right time for it too.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. Well, that sort of neatly covers. I forget. So AMD, you went to the keynote.
Yeah.
Which is sort of an introductory event for actually all of Computex.
Yeah, it was the CEO keynote.
Yeah. And it was really a subsequent day where we, obviously had access to the show floor, and so we were thus able to kind of see what everyone else is doing. What were some of the companies that we visited during day one?
Well, first day I focused on first floor. I tried a more flexible structure to my coverage this year, because last year was very much I had an appointment with X, Y, and Z, and it was running from Nangang to Taipei City Hall, to the main station area, to 101 to the Grand Hyatt, back to Nangang, over to somewhere else. And I spent half the time of I probably spent about half my time at the conference in a taxi, because it's the only way to get between the events fast enough.
Yeah.
As this year I focused floor 1, day 1, floor 2, day 2, and then the other side, day 3, and some other miscellaneous stuff today. Mm-hmm. So floor 1 was very much Silverstone, of course.
Yep.
A very generous sponsor. Covered them first. I wandered the floor for a bit, came across a few really cool things, and at the end of the day I finished off with Noctua.
So if we start in order, we have Silverstone.
We have Silverstone.
And yes. I was actually able to join you for this portion,
yes.
Which was kind of nice. So they had a number of things that were really interesting. There was one that, it was so strange. So, we got along fine with Tony, which is one of the reps for Silverstone. And so he was the one that was actually sort of giving us a tour and sort of sat us down and showed some prototypes of some other products that they're working on. But he almost sort of casually pointed out, this SFX unit, SFXL unit that we hadn't seen before. And I actually had to do a double take, because I think I saw it and I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing. And then I really thought about it. I'm like,
what?
Oh my God, is this actually a thing? And for those that are plugged into our Discord or were on the public channel at around the time that we saw this, they actually announced that they were sort of developing a 1,000 watt
Yes.
1,000 watt.
1 kilowatt.
1 kilowatt SFXL power supply.
That's wild.
And so, I'll try and dig up and repost the photos of that. I mean, it just looks like a SFXL power supply that has a 1,000 watt sticker on it.
There is a caveat there. It's SFXL, but the connectors stick out a little bit.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
Yeah.
And Tony even pointed that out, actually. He was like, it just it barely conforms. The connectors get to jump out a bit more just to use all the space that's available within.
It's 5 millimeters.
Yeah.
And I know because the cables are modular, right?
Yeah.
Yes, if it was non-modular. But in saying that, if you had a kilowatt power supply, the amount of cables hanging out the back end of that thing.
Well, that's a very fair point, actually.
But it can be like key components that are drawing most of your power.
Yeah.
It's hard to do with modern hardware, but like it could be.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
But yeah, I mean, today, if you wanted to get a power supply, I think 800 watt in the SFXL format is the largest, right?
I believe
And
so.
750 in SFX.
Yeah. So this is actually, I mean, that is a 25% increase in the available wattage. It will be at a similar, I think, rating. I forget if it's platinum or titanium.
Platinum.
It's platinum.
At this level, you have to be platinum or above.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the power density gets nearly 1,000.
Yeah, if you have 1,000 watts
per
at
liter.
5% heat output, that's 50 watts you got to cool
Yeah.
at peak load.
But it was just super exciting to see that. I think while exceedingly few people actually need that kind of power output, having that in the market is almost helpful just to sort of dissuade people of the notion that SFX is gimped in any way or is not a feasible power solution.
I'm hoping that we see more cases that don't rely on ATX.
Yeah, I mean,
because there's always the perception that SFX has been
the vast majority of people never need that amount of power. I mean,
and again, you look at there's plenty of case designs that are out there. The one that's coming to mind is Cerberus, but you can fit most even ATX size hardware into smaller cases, so you could use an SFX power supply or SFXL power supply with ATX hardware just in a smaller case.
Yeah. It's just the volume difference is significant between the power supplies.
Yeah. That's really what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. But there are systems that I've seen people build in the old case labs, the massive things that didn't even hit a kilowatt.
Yeah.
Again, it comes down to this is a Halo product. It's not going to be for everyone. The price is going to be relatively high because of the fact that it's a kilowatt.
Yeah.
But it's a Halo product, which means that the trickle-down effect will be the next generation will be more efficient 750s, for example.
Yeah. And, I mean, one thing that more people should consider when they're shopping for power supplies or parting out a system is, you have this curve of efficiency for your power supplies. So this one probably is not extremely efficient at 1,000 watts, but around 700 to 800 watts.
Oh, it'll be glorious.
I don't know what the rating is. I think it's platinum.
It's platinum.
But it's going to be around 95% efficiency, I think the standard is. So that's
and even better when you're on
sweet.
New Zealand Power, which is 230 volt. Just saying.
You are at higher voltages, you are generally more efficient, right?
Sorry?
Or you'd actually have to step down farther.
No, but it is more efficient.
Okay, whatever. I'm not going to get into it.
It's an amperage thing.
Okay.
Yeah. It has to take less amps in, so there's less... it's complicated, but generally you have two curves. Yeah. That's a worry.
Well, I'm going to trust you so we can move on from that.
So we had that power supply, but that wasn't the only thing. Actually, there was a certain storage enclosure that really seemed to capture your interest.
I forget the name. I googled it earlier.
BTO2 or
No, CS381.
Yeah, I think that's
which is it has 8 3.5-inch drives in the front. So it supports full micro ATX. It's 21 liters and uses SFX power supplies. So you can do a combination workstation NAS in that kind of case.
Yeah.
Or just a dev unit or whatever. It would almost replace half of my server rack at home.
What's the I know the GPU is towards the bottom of the board. It doesn't use a riser or anything.
No, it's a standard layout.
What's the ventilation on the GPU's side of the case?
Just usual holes in the sheet metal.
Okay.
Yeah, it is vented though.
It is. It's a very much a system integrated case. The inside is steel rather than painted black. but does have like it is mini SAS hot swap bays on the front, 8 of them.
Yeah.
Proper connectors. Cooling looks good. I mean, I'm currently running an HGO9, which is actually 23 liters. In this case, offers better expansion and better support for drives. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a great idea to run 8 3.5-inch drives in your desktop. They do build up, like they are loud, but it does offer.
And surprisingly hot.
Yeah, spin up. Like actually, not spin up. A 3.5-inch drive, average current generation, uses about 5 to 10 watts under general load.
Yeah.
You got 8 of that. That's 80 watts worth of hard drive to cool.
Yeah.
Like people think, oh yeah, they're only like 6 watts each. Yeah, but there's 8. So that was cool. Nearby was the SG14, which is at Computex last year. They had a previous generation SG14 prototype, which is built on the Lucid LC03, which is about a 28 litre mini ITX case.
Mm-hmm.
And I told our Silverstone rep very specifically that this was not okay. So this year at the thing, the SG14 is suddenly a lot smaller. It's based on, I believe, the SG07, SG08 series cases, which is like a long graphics card support mini ITX case, relatively standard layout, power supply at the front, but it looks clean. It's not gimmicky, it's not gamer-esque, it's clean.
And I will say that, and John, you and I were discussing this the day of, I think after our time there, but there has definitely been what feels like a maturity and more of a defined direction and sort of the aesthetic of a lot of these enclosures on the part of Silverstone. Yeah,
it's been an interesting change because back in the day with Silverstone especially, we had like the Temujin series, which are, they're large form factor, but they were very curved aluminium and very subtle aesthetic, and then we had the portion in between, which was like gamer crap. I hate to say it. And now even the gamer-esque cases that Silverstone's looking at now, which like the Lucid LC03, is still a relatively subtle looking case. It's very flat sides. It's like, of course, there's RGB, but it seems relatively simple looking, which is great because it's not flashy plastic and gimmicks.
Yeah,
which seems to be the current trend for this event because we'll get on to Inwin later.
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy.
And this is before we go into lighting. Although they had a lit enclosure. I mean, this is like way too large for this to be relevant to us. But one of the enclosures that they had, I totally forget what the name is. But it was
paying attention because it was large form factor.
Yeah, but it was like sandblasted silver aluminum.
Oh, that thing.
It was windowed on the side.
Yeah.
And it had RGB elements, but it's almost hard to describe what this enclosure looked like. Essentially, the front, it was very rounded. It sort of had like almost like a wrap of aluminum sort of in front of the facade. So there was a gap above and beneath that, and they were essentially reflecting, 2 RGB LED strips from that ribbon against the sort of rear panel on the front of the enclosure, and so it sort of occluded and diffused the light, made it a lot more sort of subtle compared to a lot of the more garish.
It was just pure subtlety. It was a backlight.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that it does. If you turn the RGB off, which, guys, if something's got RGB, you can turn it off. Don't freak out.
It is possible.
It is possible. Yeah, it might flash up when you start your system, but if you're like me, you leave your system on all the time anyway.
And you can probably just unplug the thing.
Yeah. But like it is such a subtle backlight. It's actually, for once, it's RGB adding to a design in an aesthetically pleasing way.
Yeah, and again, it's just emblematic of the fact that there just seems to be a maturity and a focus on aesthetics and materials.
I'm trying to find pictures of
one other thing, and I think I also had posted this on the Discord, they had this sort of demo, it wasn't like a retail enclosure or anything, it was a monstrosity, it must have been like over 100 liters. But it was sort of a demonstration of some of their own experimentation around mixed material use, as well as just new material, manufacturing methods and methodologies. So what's interesting is they had sort of this massive glass panel on the side of this custom build, but the profile of the build, if you sort of looked at it straight on, it was kind of flanged a few inches on the top and bottom, so those portions of the sides were angled. And so obviously if you have like a metal sheet panel or whatever, it's almost like tearing off a shield off the side, just because it's not just a flat panel, it's got these like very sharp bends on the top portions. And they were able to replicate that with, it must have been like 3 mil tempered glass.
Yeah.
So you have this massive tempered glass panel that has multiple bends in it. And, you know, for that design, it's sort of like, whatever, like, not my aesthetic, this thing's fucking massive. But again, when you sort of take a step back and consider just, like, that capability and material use and how that could be applied to other, you know, more constrained, more conservative, certainly smaller designs, you know, it brings about a lot of interesting opportunities. And, you know, for the most part, although glass has once again kind of been an emerging thing as people really want more visibility to the interior of builds, probably given that, you know, today is the RGB era. We are living in the RGB era. Sadly.
Bling it out.
Yeah. That's why we drink so much.
Don't get started.
You know, it's nice that, you know, it's not just a reintroduction of that material in the obvious use case, just put a window on the side. But that, you know, hey, maybe, you know, there's an opportunity for some experimentation as to how you can actually
creative with it.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've seen similar things with some of the meshes and other sort of more open air materials. That was another element that I thought was interesting, or some enclosures.
They had a large form factor case, but it's not just your usual circles or hex cutouts. So it was actually a really cool, almost maze-like design.
There have been some real strides lately in terms of development and use of, I don't even know what the cost is behind them, but essentially, you know, it used to be that like mesh in any design just kind of cheapened it in a certain way. Even though mesh has traditionally provided a real benefit in terms of providing high amounts of airflow, which can be critical in a lot of contexts. Certainly is super important, you know, in the context of small form factor design. But they just have generally not looked great. That has changed a lot recently. This isn't unique to Silverstone. There are lots of manufacturers of enclosures that have been able to produce much more robust meshes in terms of the materials and the durability. Sometimes these are actually essentially, you know, stamped metals. They're just very thin and then are you know, pressed into solid panels. But even if you look at like plastic and other meshes, you know, some of the designs look really nice. They provide a nice balance of like not giving you essentially sort of like an ugly window to see your components. And they have a nice texture, and they can actually contribute pretty meaningfully to the aesthetic and the personality of some of these designs. I'll try and throw some examples of these. I found a few across multiple vendors, so I'll throw that in the Discord after the show. But yeah, I mean, this sort of materials experimentation, I think, isn't necessarily something that happens that often. And frankly, especially among manufacturers like Silverstone. So the fact that you see it at all, for someone like me, who's like actually in the business of making enclosures and just like finds this stuff super interesting, is like a very exciting development.
Yeah, or just as a person who's interested in design, you know, it's cool to see more progressive, I guess you could say, like projects being made.
For sure.
The lack of stagnation is critical.
Yeah.
We got stuck for a while with the RGB gamer crap. More plastic, all of the plastic.
And now we're moving on to...
I mean, there's been a lot of points where cases were stuck one way or another.
I know.
There's beige boxes. Or...
Yeah, but the beige boxes are cool.
That's nostalgia.
I know.
I think they're cool too, but that's nostalgia.
You're both right.
I've got a beige server rack. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, and it does feel like in material science and design, like, so, you know, you can look at something like CPU, GPU, compute performance, memory, storage capacity, whatever. And, you know, it's not like there's a perfectly continuous improvement to these things, but like the trend is generally that like every year there's like a marginal improvement or marginal change, right? It's sort of a reasonably consistent march. But when it comes to these softer things or things that don't, you know, rely or correlate precisely with just like IPC improvements, process node improvements or whatever, it's like fits and starts, right? Like start, stop. And there's sort of these phases of trends and design and what's in vogue or whatever. So, you know, the transitions tend to happen less often. As a result, when they do, they kind of tend to be more interesting and more exciting.
Yeah.
So that covers Silverstone.
Yep.
And what were the others that you mentioned? Had you gone to Noctua?
I went to Noctua in the afternoon. Before that, I got abducted by Team Group.
I'm glad you survived.
Yeah, no, I turned up at the Team Group booth. There's a story to this. We'll go back to Colourful, which is a Chinese mainland brand.
Yes.
Joshua and I,
video cards.
yeah, generally just generic video cards.
Yep.
very tacky looking. Last year at the show, they had strippers as the booth
I
girls.
remember that.
Yeah.
That was deep.
I mean, they weren't actual strippers.
I know they weren't
right?
actual strippers, but there was a stripper pole, and they were doing a show. Like, this is the level of out of touch they are.
It was not great.
No. Joshua and I were walking the show floor, and we had a quick chat about very low profile memory, and thinking, okay, so we're going to hopefully spot someone who's got very low profile memory. The next booth we walk into is colourful, and our eyes instantly get drawn to what looked like what is now low profile memory, which is regular profile from DDR3. So the normal stuff. And it looks great. I mean, it's got heat sinks and stuff like that on it. And then we look a little closer, and this has got RGB. And the only way RGB could fit on a regular, like, DIMM size is it being a VLP chip stick inside.
Yeah.
So we look at the side, and lo and behold, they had two different products based on VLP memory.
Yeah, so if again, we actually did post these on Discord at the time.
Yeah.
But essentially, what they had done is, the heat spreaders and the RGB strip on one of the two series that they had, all in combination, led to, what I would say really ought to be like a standard height design for these memory modules. But of course, what they needed for those RGB strips was adequate room above
Like
the
clearance.
actual DIMMs. Clearance to actually support the strip and any of the electronics and wiring and whatnot. And so as a result, it seemed like they felt like the obvious solution was, we will just start with VLP modules, DDR4, mind you, which is what makes this so interesting.
I love the way their engineer thinks on that one.
Yeah. And that would give them the clearance to just raise the heat spreaders above that height, and then they would have that sort of channel above the memory modules to support RGB if they so wanted to. Obviously, the value of VLP memory to the SFF community is essential. It enables
Even
a lot
regular profile memory.
Yeah, I know. I mean, things get ridiculously tall nowadays.
Yeah.
But it enables use of many more coolers. There are oftentimes a lot of conflicts if you're using memory of even a standard height, let alone something with like a ridiculous heat spreader on it.
So the normal for these days.
Yeah, I know. And DDR4 reasonably new. I mean, obviously a lot of newer architectures are shipping to using that primarily, but it's just been really hard comparative to older generations and DDR3 and what have you to find readily available like VLP memory at all.
I went past probably about 12 booths of mainland China brands that had VLP DDR3 on their display, which is really annoying because every time I walk past, I saw VLP is like, no way.
So yeah, I mean, we ended up sort of having a conversation with the reps, and
yeah, the unfortunate thing with Colourful, because they're mainland China brand, they don't really sell to the Western market, and their reps aren't that great with English. So it took a little bit, but we got there.
Yeah, I remember last year they were like almost didn't want us in the booth just because like they didn't want to bother speaking English with us.
Yeah, but we want to promote these brands that try this stuff.
Yeah,
like they've got regular profile with like RGB, and they've got VLP inside. We want you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going from we got a bag of swag, of course, because it's Computex and you get swag everywhere. At the Colourful booth, including like a soft toy and stuff like that. So I go over to the Team Group booth because I wanted to cover their stuff anyway, because it's a decent brand that is available in my country, because it's kind of difficult to find some certain brands in New Zealand.
Yep.
And one of the reps walked up to me and they're like, "Oh, how's it going?" Yada yada. And it's like, "Oh, what? I'd like to like." She got interested in the swag that I had in the bag, and there's a soft toy, and like she just almost ripped the soft toy out of the bag and just like, "Oh, well, hold your bag. I mean, I want to show this to one of my colleagues." And if I wanted to keep my swag bag, which unfortunately at that point held my tripod and one of my video lights, I had to go through the whole booth, which was fine. I mean, they've got some cool things. It's all RGB, unfortunately. So if you don't like RGB, switch off now. But they've got a couple of, like a solid state drive that is like almost a smoked black at the back, and then it lights up with RGB. It looks cool when it's off.
Mm-hmm.
And it does work when it's off. Like the solid state drive itself will work when it's off. But they also had these M.2 coolers, which they look like water blocks, and you put your water cooling liquid in them, but they don't attach to your loop. So it's a way of having your like color coordination across your build
You
for
get
those
kind
who
of the
don't want,
aesthetic
who don't want to do RGB everything, who just want liquid cooling color.
Yeah.
But it turns out, according to the reps, that just even having the liquid inside the cooler, because the effects of convection actually still takes a few degrees out of the M.2 drive anyway. Almost equivalent to having an aluminium heatsink on there.
I wonder how much that actually works.
I am going to ask them and try this out because it's an interesting thing for them to try, because they're the only ones that come up with this, and the fact that it's an innovation thing that nobody has come across.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it just like becoming saturated with heat and staying there, you know? But maybe like the sprinting...
Which a normal heatsink will do that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, but if it's not like actually...
Actively cooled?
Not actively cooled, but like if it's not able to disperse its heat, you know? If just the fluid absorbs the heat and it stays there.
Yeah. I mean, of course they had like the typical stuff on display, like DDR4 memory that was twice the height it should have been.
Yeah. But I guess liquid is very good at like resisting rapid changes.
Yeah,
in
well, that's why
temperature.
water cooling is so good.
Yeah.
And you can kind of almost use it as a heat sink, like a heat soaking thing that itself and keep something
because
like
of its density.
Especially with a solid state drive, if you're only like using it fits and starts, the temperature's going to go up and down really quickly. But if you've got water there, it's going to soften it out a lot.
So yeah, maybe it is useful.
Yeah, I want to try it. I'm going to ask them to. Because I am looking at building.
Why not try it?
I am looking at building a water cooled server in the coming months. Just a hint.
Cooled server.
Oh yeah. So yeah,
at the bottom of your rack, right?
At the bottom of the rack. I'm not stupid. So there was team group. What else did I say? There's the usual stuff. Like if you go to our YouTube channel, you will see my summary video for day one. There is some stuff in there that obviously, I mean, it's been 4 days of show. I can't remember everything. I snuck upstairs and had a look at ASRock, of course. We'll get to that. I'll just have a quick look at the video. What else have I got in here? ID Cooling had a quad 80mm radiator. Leanne Lee was showing off the redesigned TU-150 case with a mechanical handle on it, which looks so much better. And it feels so robust too.
Good.
What else have we got in here? We visited Zotac. Not much really to show. That was out of what we expected. There was no massive new launch or anything like that. The ZEC Minis were on display in multiple colours, of course. And that's about it for day one.
Was Noctua around for day one?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Noctua was the last of day one.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting thing. One second. Noctua was... And there was a couple of really awesome things and a couple of really disappointing things.
Go on.
Okay, so the really exciting things, the 60mm slim fans are coming out.
That's correct.
Yeah. The Chromax black fans are coming out. Now for the disappointment, the 120s are not yet. And they're both the Sterox design and the slim. Also a disappointment, they've basically put on the back burner all of their other slim fans. So the Slim 50, the Slim 60, the Slim 70, the Slim 140, I believe.
I believe so.
Yeah. They're all on the back burner, probably 2022.
Yeah, for a while.
Yeah, it is.
Even still, like, hearing about fans getting me excited is probably a testament to how awesome Noctua is.
Yeah. So when we're talking about 120 for the Chromax fans, it's actually a Sterox fan.
Yep.
Which is kind of grey. It's an interesting colour combination. Speaking of Chromax, they've also released grey Chromax, like the corners for the fans.
Yep.
Which do look really good on the Chromax Sterox fan.
I remember they have the clear acrylic for their tests.
Yeah, their prototypes.
Yeah. The prototypes are still there.
Yeah. I'm disappointed that that's not a material they're going to use.
Well, the problem is as soon as they do that, everyone's going to say RGB.
Yeah.
And
but people are going to do that either way.
That was a discussion I had with Noctua. I'll come back to that. Be afraid. The main prototype they had on display this year was a passive cooler about the same size as the NHD15. Weighed about the same, but it could passively cool, I think it was 155 watts. With a little bit of fan cooling in the case. Completely passive, I think it was 105.
That's like
let me double check the values for
that. They usually expect there to be a fan somewhere in the enclosure.
Yeah, but they were running a completely passive system, running forget what CPU was.
So it's 120 watts in a
That's it.
fanless case with appropriate amounts of natural convection.
There you go.
So no moving air at all.
Yeah.
If you have case fans or fans directed at the cooler, they're quoting closer to 160 watts.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
But
It
keep
is
in mind
great.
that this thing is the same size as the NHD15S.
And it's, heavy, massive. Like,
Well,
this is like a figurative chunk of metal.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I expected it to be heavier than it was, but I lifted it up, and it feels not. It feels about the same as an NHD15S with a couple of fans on it. Because I run a D15 in my SG09 because it fits.
Yeah,
It's the
I
biggest
think
cooler that fits.
it is of similar weight. And just to describe it, I'm actually going to throw a photo or two into the Discord right now. But like proportionally, it's very similar. It just has like a sick number of heat pipes, and instead of having like many thin fins bunched up,
Yeah.
It's like almost like plates of metal, but
Yeah.
far fewer of them and a lot more space in between. Presumably just because like it's relying on, there's no direct air current hitting it, so they're probably just this maximizes whatever ability of the cooler to dissipate heat, which is only being lifted through convection. So maybe the channels need to be larger. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much that. The channels have to be larger.
But
I did some testing a while ago with, I think it was the Scythe Ninja 4, which has relatively large spacing between the fins.
Mhm.
But a standard air cooler designed for active airflow, the fins are far too close to each other to actually cool passively effectively. You need to have that space for the thing.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is that they're using thicker fins to kind of balance out the fact that the gaps are bigger as well. Because you need that thermal mass to take up the spikes in CPU load.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the little copper heatsink components that you can get. They're usually like quite large spacing between them.
Yeah, because they're designed for convective cooling.
Yeah.
They also had a 140 mil Sterox prototype, which I was very happy to see.
Yeah, it's again we're getting into larger things.
No, but lots of
know.
enclosures of our size and
I mean,
progenitor.
I'm pretty sure you
support
can fit those in
140
S4 minis, right?
And saying that my SGO is 9, I've got a 200 sitting at the top.
Yeah.
And look, if you can fit a 140, you can get that a hell of a lot quieter than a comparable 120.
Yeah.
So,
It's
You know.
just airflow.
I mean, to be fair, prototype Sterox 140 mil means
Prototype Noctua.
prototype exactly. So
I'm not sure
So
if-
convert to Noctua time. Hold
I'm
on.
not sure. Yeah,
I'm doing the math. Hold on.
I'm not
punching
sure.
out a
if
number.
I'm not sure if Noctua time is close to Valve time or Elon Musk time.
It will release in 2086. No.
Also,
I mean, to be fair, when I talked with the reps, they were like 2020 at the earliest, probably more like 2021 thing. It's like a few years, essentially, if it's at that stage based on historical trends.
that is the great thing about Noctua, though, is they don't release crap. It's always
They take their time.
It's always perfection when it comes out. Yeah. And Vegetable Stew in chat mentions whatever happened to the desk fan adapter. That was on show. It's getting very close to production. It's
Yeah,
basically a 120mm Sterox fan, I think, or a
The story behind that thing is
it's
just
hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who are in the know, the Noctua likes to do certain projects and things on the side. Usually, I actually work with like other creators and whatnot to find creative uses of their fans. But they had the idea of like, what if we tried to use a Noctua fan as like a desk fan? Because obviously most desk fans out there are garbage.
I want to start with the origin story of this.
I mean, I do it myself. I use the 200s on my desk at home.
So one of the Noctua engineers was trying to find a fan on Amazon for his desk because it was, I don't know, maybe a little hot in the office, whatever. He needed a fan. And so he bought like more than one cheap fan off of Amazon, and they were all crap. And so there's a picture of it in the Discord now. But one of the engineers at Noctua designed this so he could put a Noctua fan on his desk with like an adapter. And so it's like optimized to be the perfect way to convert a Noctua fan into a desk fan.
The other side of it is as she uses ducted air in such a way, almost like a turbofan jet, where the airflow itself pushes more air through. So
right. I mean, this is made by like a fan engineer.
Yeah, exactly. It is surprisingly
just like
efficient.
a manufacturer
I'll put it
in
this
some
way.
factory who's like, I'm going to sell a fan.
Yeah, I put it this way: in the Type A heat, I found myself definitely like standing deliberately in front of this thing.
You were in the exhibition center. You weren't in the.
Even in that, but when I flew out of Auckland this last week, it was 10 degrees. It was 30 when I landed. It was
That's fair,
it hit
fair.
35
It's winter
today.
for you.
Yeah, I hit 35 today. Their overnight,
You got this.
their overnight low in New Zealand tonight is like 6.
Yeah. But the fan, I mean, and we had someone, so Solo posted a prototype of this sort of desk fan in the chat thread. That's actually what they had the year before.
Yeah, this year's one was black and slightly refined. They're still working on it. The frame is still really wobbly.
Yeah, it was a little wobbly. They had like a controller for the speed that had like LED indicators, but there was a little rough cut, so they were going to work on that too. But, you know, it certainly was like, from an appearance point of view, looked pretty darn close to, you know, potentially a final product design. As well as the fact that like its actual performance was great. I mean, they had it running, you know, they had it running full blast. You could hardly hear a thing, you know, but if you were sort of standing right in front of it, there was a nice, pleasingly strong air current.
It is a very directional fan.
Yeah. So I'll be curious as to like how they sell this and how much it's going to cost. I mean, I'm not going to get one, but it's cute, you know?
I mean, it's all plastic, so it shouldn't be.
And you just fit your own fan,
expensive.
yeah. As long as it comes in beige. Oh, cream, sorry.
Oh, that's funny. I wonder what they'll do for the color.
It isn't in the prototype clear acrylic. So
the prototype was white. The one they had on show was black.
Yeah.
Oh.
And they had a Redux fan in it.
That's
which
right.
is the grey and dark grey one. So I said there was a little bit of bad news and something to do with RGB. I was talking to the Noctua rep, both Jacob and the other one that I was dealing with, I can't remember his name off the hand, about the possibility of RGB, and the answer didn't please me. They said they would consider it if the market was there, but they would do it in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the Noctua that we hope for, where it's like, no, it's a possible. I was like, oh, crap.
It really amuses me that you're disappointed that they were like, maybe we can do it. It wasn't like they were like, yeah, we're going to be releasing something. It was just like, we'll see about it.
Theoretically.
Like, oh, no.
Yeah. I've used this term before, and I've mentioned it to the rep. I see Noctua as like the Rolls-Royce of the PC calling industry, or even the PC industry. They focus on quality. Like you hop on a Rolls-Royce, and it's cream leather, it is wood, everything is as Rolls-Royce says it should be. And like Noctua bowing down, like even the Chromax fans to me is selling out. That's personal opinion.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, but I see your point insofar that like, and I struggle to sort of come up with the adjectives, but like they have like a sort of professional, understated, clean, modern aura around them, and I like them doing RGB in a good way. It's like, no, it just doesn't make any sense. Like RGB is just incompatible with like at least my perception of the brand identity. And so I'd be curious as to like how they conceive of doing RGB in a good way. Like I get why you feel the way you do. In a sense, like I've felt that Chromax was kind of actually a nice way for them to straddle the line and say, oh, well, if you want the ability to like customize colors or to have something that's a little more bright, then you can have that, but they do it in a still understated way where it's like, well, we're going to stick to a conservative palette for the actual fan, but we're going to give you the option to accent that fan in such a way that you can kind of get the customizability you want without making it like totally garish or ridiculous. So I actually felt that was a nice balance. But yeah, someone saying like, oh, Noctua can do like RGB in a good way. It's like, well, it's like saying like you just can't do it in a good way. Like just by definition, it's just going to be what it is. And some people like RGB, apparently a lot of people, because they sell so well. I don't understand it. But at the very least, it's not like they're going to do RGB in exclusion to Chromax or any of their existing products. So we can just kind of ignore it in Noctua like we ignore it with literally every other vendor. But I don't know. I mean, do you guys think that they would do that? Like, do you think they would release an RGB line?
Before Tuesday, I thought no.
Oh, I can see the welling of tears in your eyes. John is crying in the studio, everyone. So.
Okay, so we should keep pushing forward because we're at an hour and a half now. We've still got...
We've only covered one day.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, 80% of what we did was in like the first. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah, because we still have our awards ceremony to have.
We do, and honestly, I feel like we've been beating around the bush a little bit, particularly given that there's plenty of interesting stuff to discuss around motherboards, specifically Ryzen 3000 series motherboards. So actually, if we want to just sort of gear shift into that, obviously, new processors mean new boards to support all the new features. AMD, the timing of them being in the keynote and being able to announce the new CPUs was helpful because that allowed all of their board partners to speak to all the new boards that they're going to be releasing. For the most part, when I've had conversations with like the ASRoCs and Asuses of the world, it sounds like the timing of pretty much all of these new announced boards is coinciding at or immediately after the July 7th release of the CPUs. So that's helpful in terms of not really have to wait for anything. Also helpful because that's pretty darn soon. So we won't have to wait long at all, period. But it was interesting because, we, of course, are fixated on what happens kind of in the MATX and especially the ITX side of things. You never know what you're going to get because it's a constrained platform, so it's interesting to understand what features are included or not, or how each brand goes about it. I would say that the impact on the Asus side and then the ITX board on the ASRoC side were the two most interesting to me of all the board
complete opposite
partners.
ends of the spectrum for that.
Oh yeah.
So let's disappoint the chat because they're suggesting that we go to the ASRoC ITX board. How about we leave the good stuff for last?
Yes.
I think I haven't seen the Gigabyte board yet because I've been busy with the show. But we'll talk about the boards that we've seen so far. So we'll start with the Asus boards, or Asus. I don't know how you're actually supposed to pronounce it because you just take away the U and it kind of analyzes how I feel about these two products. We'll start with the ITX board. We'll give them a little credit. It's a nice looking board.
Mm-hmm.
Their heat sinks and their sound card is just a little big. Air cooling selection for this new generation of boards is going to be a challenge, just because the sheer size of the heat sinks, especially at the back of the board and the expansion card, the fixed expansion card on these things.
Yeah.
But that was it was kind of on par with their previous generation ITX board for AMD. The impact, however. Yeah.
I've been waiting for this.
Okay, I'm going to annoy a few people here, but rant mode on. I think the Impact 8 is almost sacrilege to the micro GTX form factor. What they took was the ability to put two slots on something and the ability to do something really cool. I mean, we've had designs in the community for so long that had dual X16 slots, or at the very least an X16 and an X4. And they took that and they thought, oh no, let's just put a sound card there. And not only that, they put a SODIMM slot above that, and they put two M.2 cards on that, and that thing is 82 millimeters high. No air cooler that I can think of, offhand, will fit on that if it's a top-down. This thing...
It's just really confusing, is the word that I use to have been using to describe it.
It's disappointing. It's offensive to small form factor, in my opinion.
I don't know if it's that bad, but...
Strong opinion. I don't care. Mini GTX has been my glory, my glory product for so long. I just back in the day when I was doing the Slice thing, I designed an AMD and an Intel Mini GTX board that I showed these guys over lunch yesterday. Was it today? Today. And the spacing is there. There is the ability to put all the VRMs there. You could put the slots there. Hell, even there's some mainland China brands like ECS who have done Mini GTX and it was an X1 and an X16 slot. Mm-hmm. They're obviously relatively low-end boards, but it is possible. And then Asus goes and puts this...
Okay, I'm actually looking at this board for the first time.
Asus...
I don't even know what to say.
Okay, I'm going to piss a few people off again. Asus puts this garbage out because... who wants that M.2 slot, that M.2 card where it is? Yeah, the sigh. the side.
It's just not. Yeah, it's not very.
It was
thoughtfully done.
It almost looks like it's designed by committee. They had to have X features on said board, and at least they're advertising at MDTX.
Yeah.
Which is great because now MDTX is being a search. Like I've noticed an uptick in the search thing on Google for MDTX. Conveniently, my picture's at the top, so people can see what MDTX could be.
The picture of your design, that is, right?
Yeah,
not a picture of you yourself.
No, they've got the pictures of the thing.
Yeah.
But like, they took an opportunity to use this form factor that fits in any ITX case that doesn't use risers but has 2 slots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, more or less.
And they failed. Something chronic.
I mean, it's like DTX isn't interesting as a form factor, and I think obviously a lot of people, us included, wish it were of meaningful provenance, but this approach, it's like, well, you're breaking compatibility. It's not ITX, so there are enclosures you can't use this with, and now people have to actually think about that.
Yeah.
You're actually leveraging the benefits of the increased footprint that DTX could provide in terms of expandability, PCI devices.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like the worst of both worlds. And then if you want to use M.2, now you're compromising on like any cooler that you would actually feasibly want to use, given the fact that this is a quote unquote ITX board. Like it's just huh? Like,
Yeah, what were they
guess
thinking?
it's kind of
the favorable way of looking at this is it is last generation. I'll just use that like really broadly. Like in an ITX system, all you needed was an ITX board. You had 2 sticks of RAM, so you could get up to 16 gigs or even 32.
Yeah.
You had a video card, and you could use M.2 SSDs, and like everything was there for a high-end system.
Yeah.
So now you can do your RAID M.2 drives on that same system with this board. So like, it is an iteration in that sense, but like, that's the most favorable way you can look at this board, I think.
Like, how to put it? The people who are going to want a high-end sound solution, which I believe is what they're kind of aiming for here, being a standalone sound card. I would be interested to see what slot that's on, because you might be able to riser it.
Yeah.
They're going to use a USB DAC or some other audio solution that isn't that.
Right.
And they could have...
Yeah,
And
it's so easy to have an external solution
And they could have had, even if they had even a X1 slot on there, they could have had the opportunity for people who wanted a physical integrated sound card to put that in there.
Or like some weird riser to plug into an M.2 slot or something.
Yeah.
But they...
Yeah. No, it's
the collective size.
It's confusing and befuddling and honestly a little disappointing just because, there have been multiple awesome entries in the Impact series of ITX boards over time. And in fact, it's definitely one that I would generally consider whenever I was looking at like a ITX build in general, just because, build quality is good, they're expensive, but they're very, very fully featured. But in this case, it feels like in kind of a lot of the areas in which they either had an opportunity to provide something that would distinguish their board, or in which they really needed to be thoughtful around how day-to-day or in a build scenario people would actually use this thing, they really were kind of thoughtless. Like their approach wasn't good. And, it's a shame.
It's a shame. They had They had a big opportunity to do something completely different, which is not usually an ASUS thing. Usually they just do your normal thing, plus make it premium.
Yeah, I mean they've become ROG is pretty formulaic in general, right? But I remember, and this must have been like 3 or 4 revisions ago, but like they used to go, just to be able to support like the flagship features that you would expect of any ROG board. Things like, awesome power deliveries, like 8 or 10 phase design or whatever. I mean, they did like crazy ass shit to support that, from like multiple mounted daughter boards. And
P8Z77i, I believe, deluxe.
Those are ROG boards that would do that?
No, that wasn't ROG, that was pre-ROG.
Okay.
Yeah. The AMD M4 Ti Deluxe, the first one that actually used SODIMs in a meaningful way.
Right. So like, they have demonstrated across multiple products that like they are willing to kind of go out of the box to be able to continue to support these enthusiast class features and performance and whatnot in a good way, right? Like doing pretty crazy things. You know what I mean? Like having all of these vertical daughter boards is just essentially them manufacturing more space, PCB space, where there was none because they needed it. I mean, really, it's like cool stuff. That's cool, I guess. But then, you know, if you can't marry that with a eye towards practical design and thoughtfulness again around like how people are actually going to be using this thing, it's like that's all great and interesting and wonderful, but you can't, as the end user, actually meaningfully leverage the performance, feature, or other benefits that enables as a consequence. As a consequence of sort of leveraging those engineering feats. So I don't know. Well, I'll be curious as to what the market response is to this. I'll be curious as to like who, what folks in our community use it and how they use it, and just sort of, you know, what feedback is around that. But
on this board, we can take out the sound card, right?
I do. You can take it out, but what's underneath? What is that slot? Is it an M.2 that you can adapt to be something else?
It looks like it's a PCI Express slot, but it also looks like the I/O kind of obstructs it from reaching a slot.
Yes. Yeah. I know. Okay, you literally can't. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know what to think about this thing anymore.
So for those,
I'm glad you've finally seen it, because now you understand the rant that I had at lunch.
Yeah. So just to paint a picture for folks, if you look at just a top-down photo of this board, and in fact, I'll try and find a photo online, or I have one on my phone.
There's not a good way for me to share the one I'm looking at on Discord.
Yeah. But essentially, if you have like a top-down view of this board, you can see where that device is, and you can see where the slot would sit. And it is in conflict with the I/O,
or like the heatsink.
Yeah, with the cover of the I/O shield, such that even though there would theoretically exist the option to use that to mount any PCI device that you might want, you can't, because the I/O is dropped down too low. It actually blocks use of that slot.
This is even weirder than I thought.
I know, it's bizarre. Like, it's, you know. We felt very conflicted looking at this in person and talking with the rest.
On the bright side, we're getting a new MDTX board.
Yeah, I wouldn't know if conflicted is
that's our silver lining.
From me, I don't think conflicted is the right word. My opinion was very strong from the moment I saw that thing. But I'm that kind of person that I get opinionated quite a lot. I get in trouble. Just ask about Phoenix.
But other than all those things, it was a pretty great board, right, guys?
Yeah, I agree.
So on the one hand, we had that board. There was the Gigabyte. Gosh, I'm gonna get this name totally wrong, but it's like the 570i Aorus Pro Wi-Fi, I think.
I've actually seen it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. I haven't had the opportunity to see it because the Gigabyte booth at Nangang was literally laptops and workstations.
Yeah,
that was it. So
they had like motherboards, but it was like a succinct collection. It was kind of on the side of their whole booth. I mean, I actually have a spec sheet up in front of me right now, so you know, for the most part, it kind of has exactly what you might expect or want, but not much beyond that. You know, it supports the socket, the wattage, so you can drop in any of the CPUs that you would want. 2 slots, up to 64 gigs of memory. For the interface, you know, it does have an M.2 connector at PCI 4.0 x4 speed, so that's nice. It's full speed. I/O, you know, a bunch of USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports on the back. I actually don't have a shot of the rear I/O on the panel, so I'll try and find that and throw that in the chat as well. But, you know, like, it's essentially a mid-range board. Like, I think the main thing you'd expect from this is good value, so you don't want the price to be too ridiculous. I don't have pricing information around this, but I don't see anything that would lead me to believe that they're going to gouge. And just, you know, the appropriate amount of connectivity. I think with that M.2 slot at full speed, they have sort of reasonably modern back panel connectors. You know, it's basically like a good standard bearer for most builds in most cases, assuming that the price is reasonable. I don't have information around a release date. I don't know if you got any info from Gigabyte around that. But
I didn't even talk to anyone at Gigabyte because they had nothing on show for us.
Yeah, so my guess is...
I'm shocked they didn't have these boards on display. This is a new generation thing. And
Did they have their AI laptops on display?
Yes. But it was...
Phenomenal.
Their display was literally laptops, a couple of data center things, a couple of last gen Intel boards, and that was it. Like...
That's too
Come
bad.
on, come on, guys.
That's a Taiwanese company, too.
No, they're mainland.
Are they mainland?
They're mainland.
Oh.
That's why they're at Nangang 2 rather than Nangang 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody gave me the wrong info on that.
Okay. Nah,
Maybe they said they're made here.
they're possibly designed. They are designed in Taiwan. They're made in China.
Okay.
Because they have on their motherboard designed in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Like if you're specifying designed, it ain't made there.
Yeah, I guess I heard wrong then.
So that covers, because that was the only MITX board that Gigabyte had. I don't know if did they have an MATX board at all?
Again, they didn't have anything on show.
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure.
I've been trying to cover as much as I can by myself, mostly on the show floor, so it's been hard. I haven't actually had an opportunity to look at anyone else's coverage.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I've probably seen is Linus's Rain Rant and the Level 1 Tech video where my camera rig's in the shop. That's about it. Oh, yeah,
Your camera's famous, though.
The Gigabyte board is pretty generic.
Yeah, but that's pretty typical.
Which is good.
Yeah, generic's not necessarily
Generic is
bad.
better than that disaster that is the MDTX board.
Man, the picture that you shared, it looks even worse than the one I was looking at before.
Oh, just the angle?
The height of the card is
It's
a lot more
82
apparent.
millimeters.
Oh my god.
Sorry, we're going back in time here.
Yeah, sorry.
So that covers Gigabyte. That covers Asus.
Yeah, let's move. I haven't looked at MSI at all. Again, they show the displays were only like the Trident and a couple of laptops.
Yeah,
How about we jump to ASRock?
I think we can do that.
We'll start off with.
time for ASRock?
Yeah.
It's time for
We'll start with the board that I'm most excited for, and it's not the board that Joshua's most excited for.
Go on.
The board that I'm most excited for because I'm a creator and I need high levels of memory and high levels of performance. Now, at the moment, I'm running a ASRock B450M Pro 4, which is a micro ATX board with an X16, an X16 physical, X4 wired, an X1 slot, and 4 DIMM slots. They've taken that design and they've applied it to X570, except for both the PCI 16 slots are full PCI 16 with Gen 4. So you could do full Crossfire, I think it's only Crossfire certified for that, for graphics cards. And no matter what expansion card you throw at it, it's going to work.
Yeah.
Like even if you had an X8 RAID card in that, or an X8 new gen PCI 4 SSD, it will work.
Yeah, I think there's even like X16, I'm doing air quotes here, PCI or NVMe like RAID cards for like 4 drives.
Yeah, they bifurcate them out to 4 drives. And just the capacity of that board for what I do.
Yeah.
I thought the board that I was using at the moment was great because I had 4 DIMMs, I had good I/O, I had an X16 and other expansion for the cards that I do use because I do use a capture card. I do use occasionally a sound card or any other card that I'm testing for something because it's a lot easier for me to test a card that I'm trying in my desktop because I've got the full performance available to me.
Right, you want to use a good CPU.
Yeah, because I've got my Ryzen 5 1600X in that and 32 gigs of memory. Soon to be an R9 3900X because why not? So that's the board I'm most excited about. But the board that most of us are excited about is the X570 ITX with Thunderbolt 3.
Yes! They did it! I mean, this is crazy for a number of reasons. I'm totally going to interrupt and talk about this for a minute or two, so I apologize for that. So there are a few things going on here. ASRock had a whole press event, like a conference, where they talked through a whole bunch of these new boards for X570 for the Ryzen 3000 series. And it was actually a reasonably comprehensive range. Obviously our focus is more going to be on the MATX and MITX side of things, of which they only had one board each. So most of these boards are ATX. They were doing sort of a few things that was interesting. One was just what features they had decided to incorporate in these boards. And I believe, and I may be incorrect, so someone correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously there's been sort of an understanding that as a matter of theory, given moves that Intel has made recently, more like in the past year or so with the Thunderbolt 3 interface, that any board, even AMD boards, could support it so long as it had an x86 architecture. But no manufacturer had actually implemented that interface on an AMD board in practice, right?
Yeah.
And that could have been for a variety of reasons, like I don't really know, maybe the cost, maybe just certification, lack of a belief in that feature being something that customers would value or whatever. So the first thing that was interesting was that, oh, wow, like ASRock, for any board at all, for Ryzen 3, decided that Thunderbolt was an interface worth adding. And I think they're the first to actually have done this on an AMD board, period. But then, we take it a little further, and not only is this an interface that they add to their flagship ATX boards, the only other board in which they incorporate this as a feature is the ITX board, the smallest board on their lineup. Which I'm super excited about because I actually use Thunderbolt day to day. I have Thunderbolt devices. And so the fact that this is now available on their smallest board, the only board that is actually relevant to me when I consider things that I would be building, is like super duper exciting. Yeah. And is also just like kind of a testament to their engineering prowess, just given the fact that like there's a heck of a lot more they got to do to support that interface in that form factor versus either other interfaces or on larger boards.
Yeah.
There's also sort of another product which we'll sort of jump into a little bit later that sort of utilizes Thunderbolt as an interface, and so I think it's clear that strategically ASRock is probably sort of establishing themselves as a vendor that really prioritizes adding that to lots of their boards to sort of distinguish themselves from the competition.
Yeah.
In general, penetration of Thunderbolt as an interface, certainly on just the PC side more generally, but in and across all of these consumer boards has been super, super limited. But I was just super excited to see it as someone who actually uses it and values it, particularly, since I think it's becoming clear enough that like in the near future, maybe even with like the next revision of Thunderbolt, that having, a readily accessible way to just plug into essentially fancy PCI lanes for all sorts of devices and whatnot, and some of the features like daisy chaining and whatnot that Thunderbolt provides can actually lead to some exciting use cases, exciting external solutions and devices. And clearly ASRock, decided for whatever reason this was worth investing in as a feature. I still can't rationalize why they added Thunderbolt to ITX. I'm so happy they did, but I can't rationalize it.
I mean, my assumption, this is just speculation here, but like it's probably a sort of pay-to-play sort of deal where you get certified and you have to pay this fee. And so they like met the criteria and they were like, okay, well we can just put this on X, Y, and Z board. And maybe the designs for the MATX or the other ones were more mature. So it was harder for them to implement Thunderbolt 3 on those. I don't know. That's just a guess.
And I don't know. I think I don't know enough to be able to do a very good job speculating in this area. I think in general, when I've had conversations with a few vendors around like their choice to, for the most part, not include Thunderbolt, it's really just been around like Intel doesn't make it easy.
Yeah.
Even though they sort of opened up the standard in a certain way.
But
it also could just be they want to stand out in that regard. Stand above their competitors by, oh yeah, we have Thunderbolt 2 on our board.
I hate to say it, but this generation of ITX boards, ASRock didn't need to do much to stand above the competitors.
I mean, there's theoretically still time for things to happen.
I know. I hope one of the other manufacturers
there's
just
honestly
sees
not that much time, but there is still time for things to happen.
I just hope the other manufacturers see what's out there.
Yeah.
Here's this feedback, and in 3 months' time, we actually get a good competitor board.
Yeah. I mean, that's what all of us want, I think.
We don't just want one awesome board and
clear option.
A lot of mediocres on the market. We want a good range so that you can pick the brand that you like. You can pick the I/O options that you like. We don't want to have just you have to buy this board.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunately we've got that in the cooler market where you kind of have to buy this cooler for a small form factor.
Yeah.
It's like you're being adventurous to do something different.
Yeah.
So just pivoting back to the board itself, just to sort of talk through the features. So Thunderbolt's obviously very interesting.
Yeah.
They made a few. this is more structural changes than anything to the I/O. So ASRock in sort of the last generation had pivoted to a lot of their boards using a fixed I/O shield, which is fine.
Controversial.
Yeah, it's definitely controversial because there's sort of the benefit of like, oh, well, if you have like a removable I/O shield, they're kind of crummy and really finicky and they don't look that great. And so if it's like fixed, like it just kind of looks nicer. Problem being that, oh, well, at least with the sort of loose I/O shield, it can kind of have very wide tolerances.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you actually install it, it sort of has a fit and finish where it's like pressed up against the enclosure and the cutout for it, and so there are no gaps, and it kind of looks like it fits better versus these I/O shields that are like a fixed amount with no tolerances just attached to the board. On a lot of enclosures, it can either lead to gaps, which just look bad, or sometimes like the alignment isn't just quite right, and you actually can't correct for it because it's static. And so you might even not be able to install it properly.
Yeah.
It just looks offset and really is just not a good look.
I didn't even realize that was an issue, but that's...
Less common, but I've seen it for sure,
Yeah.
especially for cheaper enclosures.
Yeah.
So what ASRock has done is they said, well, we still think that the approach of having the I/O shield be fixed onto the board is like the best approach because it's the cleanest look. But it's clear that we need a way to provide a little more tolerance around the edges such that you can essentially correct for those gaps or for that offset.
Manufacturing issues, like the
Right.
tolerances.
Yeah, the world is imperfect, essentially.
No.
So what they did is they made sort of an engineering change to how they've implemented these I/O shields such that around the perimeter of it, and I was able to sort of fiddle around with it a little bit, you can essentially just sort of shift the thing around a little bit in any given direction. Not very much. I mean, it's certainly still a lot less flexible in that way than like a loose I/O shield, because the way that most of those tend to work is you have the I/O shield itself, and then you essentially have like a perimeter of crimped like material, like aluminum or metal or whatever they've stamped it out, maybe steel.
Yeah.
And then when you're installing the shield, essentially what you're doing is you're compressing that crimped metal more in areas where you have more or less tolerance space than the other, and so it sort of automatically adjusts to appropriately sort of fill in the cutout and align it with the ports. So it doesn't behave in this way. It's literally just a shifting of the plate relative to the fixed I/O on the board.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly a world of improvement from not having any ability to adjust at all.
Don't give it all. Yeah.
I'm going to come up with a controversial opinion here. I'm liking the fixed I/O shield thing.
Yeah, I personally
Because
prefer it.
The amount of times that I've built a system with the old sheet metal stamped things, and I've gone to put I slot the board in, I screw it all together, I close up the case, I look at the back, and there's this little tab from one of the cutouts stuck inside the HDMI port, for example, or inside the USB. Take it apart, the whole system, especially with good cable management, and having a I/O shield that is already on there and ready to go. To me, just. And the other side of it is there's also a few cases in our community, indie cases, that don't have capacity for an I/O shield. There's literally an opening at the back.
Yeah.
Custom mod cases come to mind, for example. Not that I recommend them. That's another story. But yeah, controversial opinion. But I probably lost count of the amount of times I've had to rebuild a system because I wasn't paying attention. I slotted the little tab that's supposed to do grounding onto the port inside the slot.
Yeah.
Inside the port.
So there's the fixed I/O shield. The other thing, actually, and this is very specific. That fixed I/O shield thing is like something that they've done across their line. The other thing they've done that's specific to the ITX board is they realized that it has a 10-phase VRM power delivery,
which is insane.
which is sick for an ITX board.
Well,
so
and so they say 10-phase, it probably is 8+2.
Yeah, 8+2, that's fair. But they were like, oh, well, we need an adequate solution to actually cool these things. But it's hard to find room on that board for an adequate heat sink or whatever. So what they did was they actually have shifted the locations of these to be encapsulated within the I/O cover for this fixed I/O rear solution on the back, and they have made that cover entirely out of metal, and then they've attached a heat pipe that covers all of the VRMs to the cover. So in other words, they were already going to essentially lose this space on the board because it was covering the I/O that was installed.
Yeah, that's
but now
better.
it doubles as a heat sink to actually cool the VRMs, allowing them to sort of save the space on the motherboard, which I thought was pretty clever. I also liked just because I think the metal cover for the I/O looks nicer, feels nicer.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
it just
we went-
exudes a
having
more
seen it,
premium feel for the
we-
board
we
in
We
general.
went through a generation, especially of VVGA boards, where that was a stamped piece of steel just to make it look pretty. Now that thing actually has function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's a good
so
way of doing it. That doesn't mean that you have a giant card stick out of them. Sorry, I'll stop.
I mean, everything about it sounds like it's a clever design decision.
Compared to the other competitive, like the other X570 boards on the market,
Yeah.
this is a clear winner of this generation.
I mean, I'm inclined to agree just from a feature set point
Yeah,
of view.
the Thunderbolt
alone.
3 is just a standout point.
Yeah.
And then the 10-phase power, which I can't remember what the other brands have, but 10-phase is really solid. For
Yeah,
RTX.
I mean, I'm sure power delivery will be fine on the Impact. The Gigabyte board isn't going to do anything fancy around that.
no,
but
it just looks like a regular.
Yeah, but it'll conform such that, like, whatever...
You better run the 105 watt CPUs on it.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean,
There
it's
is
a
one
nice board.
thing about the ASRock board that is a little different,
Mm-hmm.
and that is, isn't that the one with the Intel mounting?
Oh, that's right. Oh my goodness, how could I forget even mentioning that? Yes. So, and they didn't even explain this like in their presentation for the for all the boards in like the news conference, which I was a little surprised about. But yeah, so they've gone with Intel mounting
Yeah,
on the Intel socket,
AMD socket.
or excuse me, on the AMD socket, which is super fascinating.
Wow.
I can see why. The AMD keep out zone is huge.
It is.
It is huge. And the Intel one is significantly smaller. Plus, the Intel keep out zone has ability for you to actually go into it somewhat. It's not
Mhm.
like the AMD keep out zone is very much a rectangle, whereas the Intel one is a circle with the 4 spots for the
Right.
things. It also gives you the ability, because the Intel one is a square mounting hole pattern, you can rotate the cooler around, especially for some of the
Mm-hmm.
low-profile coolers and whatnot. It's really useful to have
So you're
that.
not like blowing into your RAM or
Yeah.
whatever.
You can have the cooler that fits with everything like that, but I forgot where I was going with that.
Well, I definitely think. I think for the end consumer in most cases. Well, this is actually I would love your guys' opinion on this, right? Because I think in the real world, there's a practical benefit. I think it will be easier for people to select for coolers and ensure compatibility and whatnot.
I think so.
The
yeah.
ecosystem is just a little easier
Yeah.
on the Intel side.
There's so many more coolers available.
However, like there's kind of a mindset change that has to happen because it's like, oh well, it's Intel mounting on an AMD socket. Like I can totally see, I can envision folks on our forum creating threads out of confusion
Yeah.
of like, well, why doesn't my
Stock
cooler
cooler fit.
for an AMD
Yeah.
socket not work for my AMD board?
Actually, the stock cooler is a pretty compelling point to that like conversation.
Mhm.
Like, that's part of the value proposition for a lot of Ryzen processors is like you don't need to buy a better cooler, so the included cooler
It's good.
actually is part of the value of the
Yeah.
chip. You know.
But the other side of this that I just thought of is that this is probably the first generation that will really suck in a lot of the Intel users.
Yeah, that's
Because
true.
this is Ryzen proving itself again. It's not just one-hit wonder kind of thing.
That's a fair
So
argument
you'll
too. Is
have a
that,
lot of-
like if you're migrating, you can take your
Yeah.
cooler from
A
an
lot of these
Intel
users
chip.
will be migrating, and it's probably this generation they'll be migrating because now they can get
Yeah.
PCI Gen 4 before you can get it on an Intel platform. You can get all these extra functions that AMD is providing on an a AMD platform.
Yeah.
So the weird thing is that it does, for some reason, have the Intel backplate on the CPU. Have you seen that? It's got the 3 screws for the Intel backplate.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I don't know what
I
function
wonder.
that's.
I wonder if it like is branded as well.
Yeah,
that would be funny.
but well, no. The thing is, those are always branded like Foxconn, not
Okay.
Intel. Yeah, they're made by Foxconn generally. But it's a fascinating board overall. It's got like, again, it kind of almost like a younger brother to the X299 EITX, where you can't look at a square millimeter of that board and not see a component that's sitting there. Like the density on that is impressive.
Yeah. It's a cool board.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
And for those
Yeah.
wondering, the heatsink at the top of the board and the heatsink at the bottom of the board for VRMs are both the same height as the I/O, so 40 millimeters. So it's a lot more compatible with even the normal air coolers that would probably be running, including the top-down ones, compared to the competitors, which, yeah, SOL. We're at 2 hours. Let's get moving.
Oh my goodness! Already?
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's a lot easier. It seems a lot easier to podcast when you're actually in the same room as the other people.
This is true. It makes it a lot easier.
The last podcast that we used to do, I'd be awake at 4 o'clock in the morning.
So there is one other thing that ASRock announced that is technically in the ITX form factor. I mean, it's a little weird to describe it in that way. But I did want to discuss it, or at least get your guys' thoughts on it. So when we were at this sort of conference presentation, they sort of split the presentation into sections around some of their specific product lines. They had the leaders of various divisions kind of presenting like what they had to share that day. And the last section of it was to present essentially a whole new product by ASRock and our good friend Bill Chen, who's the fearless leader of all things small form factor ASRock.
Well, he is the head of their small form factor division.
Yes, his title is literally head of small form factor.
Which is a cool thing, considering I don't know of any other company that has a literal small form factor division.
Yeah. But so he went into this new product, and it was interesting. He had this sort of motif of I can't really describe in words what it is and why it's important, or why they decided to build this thing. And so he had sort of this interesting equation. But fundamentally what they had produced was on an ITX board, rather than doing a motherboard to support a CPU or whatever, they had essentially created a board to support a Thunderbolt eGPU solution. And so if you look at this board, and I'll try and throw some photos on our Discord in a second, it conforms to mini ITX. So it's a mini ITX size board.
Thin ITX.
Well, except the cooler.
The cooler,
yeah.
But yeah.
So it has the I/O on the back, and in terms of layout and whatnot, it looks kind of normal, except a few things. One, there's no PCI slots, there's no memory slots or anything like that.
There's no CPU.
There's no CPU. I mean, there are plenty of headers and whatnot, but obviously there's no real computer to this thing. And there is a soldered-on die, GPU die, sort of in the top right-hand corner, and that's actually an RX 570 GPU. And so what they've done is they've created this board. It interfaces over Thunderbolt. And so what you do is you just take your Thunderbolt computer. It could be a desktop, could be, I think, obviously the primary use case here is you just hook up your laptop. And then that GPU is now accessible to your computer. That discrete GPU. Not only that, but of course, much like under Thunderbolt docks, all of the I/O, all of the devices that you might plug into those headers are accessible as well. So, for instance, if you have this hooked into your Ethernet, your network via Ethernet, if you have a bunch of USB devices plugged in, if you have a bunch of external monitors plugged in, all of those can ride across that one Thunderbolt connection. And really sort of enhance usage of that computer. There are a few things, though, around the specific way they've implemented this that are interesting and are a bit different than other solutions on the market that I find to be super valuable and actually sort of in general make me kind of excited for this thing. For one, they did confirm that this will have the ability to allow you to leverage the discrete GPU for built-in displays for Thunderbolt computers. So, in other words, most use cases of these eGPU solutions or these Thunderbolt docks with GPU built in is that, you hook this thing up to your computer and then you hook up the displays that you want to drive with the discrete GPU into the dock. You don't have to do this here. So you actually could just have your laptop, nothing else hooked up, nothing, right? No external devices. Plug it in, and now functionally to that device, you have suddenly enabled a discrete GPU that it has access to. And this is cross-platform, by the way. So this is not only a solution for folks who are on the Windows side, but on the Mac side. I say with
my Chromebook over here feels.
That would be interesting.
Does your Chromebook have Thunderbolt?
It does, I believe. I actually don't know.
No, I can't. Does it?
I'll try to look it up.
So Boyle in the chat mentioned that you can't upgrade the GPU. That's correct.
Yes. So
there was a very good reason behind that. Please explain.
Yes. So actually sat down with, of all folks, Bill Chen, and sort of had them elaborate on, their thinking behind this device. Because from my point of view, it's like, okay, well, I think the idea around this is super interesting. I think that this modal of usage will become very, very common in the next few years. I think we're just at the point where like we can just barely make it work with the existing technology with Thunderbolt 3 interface, with the graphics out there and all this. But the choice of 570 for the GPU was kind of an interesting one because I figured that, I don't know that that's necessarily much of a performance benefit to really encourage people to make that purchase, right?
Yeah.
And this is before we even talk about the use cases. Obviously, you can just sort of put this in a box, right? This little box on your desk and hook it in that way.
Yeah.
ASRock was actually demoing how they felt like a great use case for this, which is just essentially build this into a monitor.
Yeah, AIO dock. Basically.
Exactly. And so now essentially you can convert a monitor to a quote unquote Thunderbolt monitor that gives you that GPU and also gives you all of that expandability.
That is cool.
So, I was like, well, this is really cool, but there's a lack of upgradability. And, some people might want more performance. What was sort of the rationality or the thinking behind the RX 570 GPU choice in particular, which they will offer in 4 gig and 8 gig variants. So if you need more or less VRAM, you can kind of select for that. And the reasons were twofold. So the first reason is that, ASRock seemed to be really sensitive to wanting to create a complete solution that was reasonable in price. So they really wanted to select for parts that weren't going to be really, really expensive for them to implement. If they wanted to go about a more modular solution like MXM, such that they could do a whole bunch of graphic solutions, the main challenge there is that they're just really expensive, right? Like actually implementing that is a hardware cost. The cost of the actual MXM modules themselves are really high. I mean, they can be a multiple of the total purchase price at retail that you would pay for like a full discrete graphics card.
Which is the stumbling point for the Desmos GTX series.
Exactly. And so given that to them was such a priority, that really sort of simplified the logic in terms of selecting what GPUs, at least at launch, at start, to support. The other concern that they had was just the hardware complexity involved with implementing MXM support. So beyond all of the cost considerations, from a driver point of view, it would mean they need to support a whole bunch of things. Even from like a fundamental, like how do we build this point of view, he elaborated on the fact
the socket.
Exactly. So they'd have to have the socket. They'd have to rearrange the alignment and support of power consumption at a much higher level. They'd need to have much deeper considerations about power usage and how they'd adequately cool this thing and what the cooler would look like. They also, even some of the basics, Bill went at length describing how, they had considered it, but understood that things like the PCB would have to be totally redesigned. Mm-hmm. It's an 8-layer PCB on this thing. They'd have to shift to something more like a 10-layer PCB.
Which is so expensive.
Which is ridiculously expensive. And so all of these considerations sort of wrapped into one, while they definitely understand sort of the modalities and use cases for a more powerful GPU or especially a modular solution for GPUs, it's clear that to get to market now with something that is at a reasonable price that could still provide value and utility to folks, that they're very deliberate in selecting for the RX 570 GPU. So with all that information, totally understand why they did it. Makes complete sense. I still want this. I still want an MXM eGPU solution.
Well, there is an aside there that I think you may have missed. Bandwidth.
Sure. I have an opinion on this.
Yeah. ASRock stated that the 570 was about the best they could get without hitting bandwidth caps on Thunderbolt 3, and obviously that would have, without affecting the other I/O that you're going through there as well. Because you've got to remember that it's not just the GPU that's going through that connection, it's also all of that other
all of the I/O,
which is gigabit Ethernet, which is USB 3 times 4.
Yep.
You've got all of the stuff going Thunderbolt 3 plus a GPU. So there is that limitation to consider.
Yeah.
That caveat reminds me of a thought that I had as well, which is I know previously like eGPUs have allowed you to drive your laptop's display with the video card that you have in the eGPU dock.
Yeah.
But there has been like a performance cost for doing that.
Yeah. Because generally they run a larger GPU that can actually run on it.
So like, has ASRock actually solved that, or is using like the 570 the actual solution to that?
Fundamentally, in terms like they've they've clearly tested this and worked on it. Like, I have full belief that there wouldn't be a compromise to GPU performance, even if you like load it up on all of the I/O that they expose. And the other thing, and this is why I sort of have a point of view on this. I mean, obviously, in theory, you know, you will want to select for graphics having a full like 16 lanes. Yeah. And you know, of course, there's sort of a tapestry in the background of like, oh, well, now there's this shift with Ryzen 3000 to 4.0,
so maybe
PCIe.
Thunderbolt 4 or whatever.
Exactly. But you know, practically speaking, in almost all use cases, in most of the time, like the actual utilization of lanes by the GPU is substantially less than what may be made available to that device. And so as a consequence of that, oh, do I need to move back? Yeah, I got excited. Let me add some distance to the microphone here.
I've been watching the Audacity stream on it, and you can see where I've been talking, where Alexander's been talking, and holy crap!
I'm loud.
There's also the peaks when we're laughing as well.
Yeah, the laughing I can understand, but you can tell when Josh was talking versus us just looking at the audio profile.
I'm just so excited.
I know.
No.
I do have a thought for that in the future.
But yeah, so, you know, and I've seen a variety of articles and whatnot that have actually explored, like, what's the actual, like, utilization of bandwidth across these lanes in practice. Like, in theory, yes. There can be a lot of data throughput. You know, more recent architectures actually on both sides have really emphasized that element of, like, bandwidth, especially in like professional contexts and use cases.
That's interesting.
But you know, if you look at like what most people are doing most of the time, gaming or whatever, like there really just isn't so much communication going through that interface that you're actually meaningfully saturating, you know, even 8 lanes of PCIe.
Yeah.
Like,
I agree with that.
So, you know, I think this choice and balance, it's fine. I'm sure, you know, ASRock has done way more testing and knows way more about me and has decided, like, this works. You know, we're comfortable providing, you know, this expansive selection of ports and feature set and whatever.
Yeah.
And it won't compromise on performance and it won't hurt, you know, GPU utilization, whatever. And it may be the case that more powerful GPUs could use more bandwidth, and then maybe it's a concern. I still think in reality it's probably not gonna really be a thing. But
I mean, I do feel like this concept is like the correct, this is like an air quotes situation as well. I think this is like the right way to do an eGPU type device.
Yes.
I mean, Boyle in chat mentioned that Sonnet does what they call the GFX breakaway puck, and this is the fastest that they offer, and it's also an RX 570.
Yeah.
But this thing is literally a $500 system. Doesn't even look that pretty. I'll show you pictures here.
Okay.
It just looks like that. And all it really offers is, I'll just scroll down.
It kind of looks like a 3.5 inch hard drive, like in an enclosure.
It's got 3 display ports, an HDMI, and Thunderbolt in. And that's it. Well, those are outputs. But at US $500, I am 100% sure that ASRock will bring this product in well below that. Because an RX 570 is worth what on retail at the moment?
I do think
we'll
it's
see.
Cheaper,
There's no information around pricing, so
I know, but speculation's fun.
I would expect it to be cheaper than 500, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised like 300 to 400.
Yeah, 300 to 400, even $100 cheaper than effectively a substantially less capable expansion.
Functionally, this is very similar to like a KVM switch to like enterprise type people.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if it's like priced in a similar way to those things.
I mean, I'll put it this way: the RX 570, the current MSRP is 145.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they doubled that and came in at 300 US, you're still offering a significant value proposition to what's available in the market.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely like I said, I think it's like the right way to execute on this concept.
As I said, it's a laptop dock on steroids.
Yeah, and there's also like the Thunderbolt monitor use case that they mentioned.
Oh, the Thunderbolt monitor thing is great.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty cool like concept. Like Bitwit, he showed off his like his plain theater setup where he used like a portable monitor with a Raspberry Pi or something.
Yeah,
and like you could do something similar with this and just plug it into your laptop. Apparently not a Chromebook. This does not support.
Yeah.
As of 10 months ago, there was a post saying that no Chromebook supports Thunderbolt 3.
And another thing to mention that I don't think has been mentioned is it can support SATA. is a SATA
That's
port.
right. Yes. So one of the use cases they had.
You could throw a 2 terabyte SATA SSD in this thing.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, and just the modality in general of this device is what's so interesting to me.
Yeah.
So, like you pointed out, like what's super cool about this is it perfect? No. Like, are there changes we would like to see? Yes. But this is like the cleanest, most thoughtful, and best implementation of the idea of what something like this could be. And I really do think, like, just consider again, like, and hopefully this is a direction the market will go to in the next few years, but like consider a world in which you can, with your laptop or even desktop or other device, just on one cable, on one interface, plug in, and now you've instantly and immediately upgraded the performance.
There's a point we also didn't bring up, thanks to Canting Soup on the thing. It charges the laptop as well.
Yes. Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
So think about this. One cable, you're charging your computer, right? And you're giving it all these additional interfaces. You're giving it this improved GPU performance, right? But the main thing is that you have disassociated the GPU from your computer, right? So think about how potentially awesome this is, right? Consider how, like, in a household, right? You now don't need awesome graphics in all of your systems. You just need awesome graphics across all of your interfaces, across all your terminals. Think about, like, you can upgrade your GPU in a separate manner from your laptop, right? In the context in which you're actually going to be needing that power most of the time, right? So now that those things are separated, right, it's a lot easier to rev on this, and the life cycle for your actual computing device can be extended, just because this CPU is not the issue in mobile. GPU continues to be where there's a need for increases in performance. The separation of those now allows you to extend the lifetime of your laptop or other computer, allows you to specifically scope upgrades and other things to the GPU in the context where you need them.
You're excited about
that's leading me into two things actually regarding this, which is having a GPU, like a dedicated GPU in your laptop, just does limit your battery life.
Your battery life is nothing.
It's crazy how much that can reduce, like by hours, how much battery life you get on your laptop.
I mean, I've got the problem with my laptop right now. It's got integrated Radeon, and the battery maxes at 2 hours.
Yeah.
And this is a 9-cell battery.
There's also, because this is a 570, it should support FreeSync.
Yes.
And there are even TVs that have FreeSync.
Yeah.
So, like, you can have adaptive sync on whatever display you're using, on top of all the other conveniences that this is giving you. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. To what I like when I first saw this product, I was like, "What the is this?" But talking with you guys over the last week or so since it got released, I've thought of so many use cases where this makes so much sense.
I've been like thinking about something like this for quite a while, and just did not have ASRock's resources, of course, but also just like even the concept to innovate it in this way.
Yeah, I mean, even as like in the Thunderbolt 2 was around, people were talking about like, oh, like we could actually maybe do this. It'll be super compromised and really ugly and whatever, but you could do it.
Someone finally produced something that wasn't limited in its specifications.
Well, right, and again, it's like we're just barely.
Someone posted the Bitwit video that I had mentioned.
Just barely with the hardware and the interfaces and everything that's available are we able to do this. And so, ASRock is really threading features through a bit of a keyhole here. And again, it's like, on the one hand, it's like super exciting. On the other hand, it's super frustrating because it's like there are obvious ways in which this could be even better, and it could be sort of the full expression of which
you had a good chat with Bill about.
Yes, I did. But in a sense, it also is like
it's so easy for me to look past those limitations.
Exactly.
Like, there's a 570 in here. That's awesome as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Like it's got FreeSync, and I'm thrilled about that.
Yeah.
It's better than what most laptops. I mean, there's a lot of laptops that have a better GPU. To be fair.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of laptops that don't have a dedicated
You're going to be
GPU.
spending
At all. Yeah.
You're going to be spending a significant amount of money to get that much performance increase.
I mean, you're easily
for something that the battery life is crap on.
Yeah.
Like you could have a thin light that when you get home has got a 570.
This thing is going to probably struggle to charge a laptop that has a dedicated GPU.
Oh, that too, yeah.
Oh,
well,
man.
are there dedicated GPU laptops that are charged via Thunderbolt?
I don't know. I know my laptop has the Thunderbolt symbol on
Yeah,
it,
because
but I don't know
that's
if
a Type C thing.
properly
Because
supports.
Thunderbolt technically has a relatively low power
Yeah.
output. It's USB Type C that has the grunt.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where the interface thing is just a disaster, but that's besides the point.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so the output, the I/O, I don't know if you mentioned the I/O on this thing.
I haven't listed through it all.
Okay,
But
so the RX 570 they're going to say is either 4 or 8 gig of GDDR5.
Yep.
It's got gigabit LAN, 4 USB 3.2 Gen 1.
Mm-hmm.
So not 3.1 Gen 1, 3.2 Gen 1.
Yep.
The Thunderbolt 3, obviously. A D sub out, so VGA out. I don't know why, but let's just keep moving. HDMI 2.0.
Actually, 2 of those, I think.
Yeah, 2
Yeah.
HDMI 2.0s.
Yeah.
Wow.
A single SATA 6 gig, and LCD output
Yep.
and LVDS output for doing the all-in-ones. But not only do you have the ability to have this system, which is a dock with a screen, you could also have 2 other screens connected to it.
Yeah.
So you could get home from work, plug in your laptop, and you've got a triple screen setup for productivity reasons.
Yep. And you can daisy chain Thunderbolt devices.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
so good. So good.
Yeah. That's practically the setup that I'm trying to work towards, where I could just like have a laptop that's going to last me all day, no matter what.
Yeah, so
And
like
then
your
just, like,
Chromebook almost.
Yeah. Ideally, I could migrate to this thing, but that's its own conversation. Let's not even get into that. But having a laptop that I could just bring home, plug it into a dock, and have a bunch of monitors with adaptive sync, that matters to me, and people are not catering to that. This could, and just having that setup, that's basically all that I want right now.
Yeah, it's opened up a lot of doors, I'll put it that way. Didn't it have an internal 19-volt plug as well?
Oh, I'm not sure.
A second. Yeah, Exploding Waffles mentioned about internal. Yeah,
It has a 2-pin,
It's got
right?
an internal 2-pin, so you
Yeah.
could connect an HD Plex 160 to the
Oh,
thing
for sure.
inside
Oh, for sure.
for a really dense box.
Yeah, and this is actually something we haven't really discussed at all, and ASRock didn't really actually have much color around this yet, but it is interesting, like, oh, well, they talked about this could be part of a Thunderbolt monitor solution or whatever. You also could just throw this in pretty much any ITX enclosure because it is a ITX board.
Yeah.
But yeah, like how you actually enclose this is interesting,
So they're just offering this as a board.
Yes.
Yes, so the end goal is to offer the, when I talked with Bill, it sounded like they wanted to offer it as a board,
Or
right?
like,
or in a packaged solution.
Yeah,
so
just a basic. I think they're using Cooler Master for their demo box.
yeah, so it will be pretty bare bones, which is
Yeah.
fine because like you don't need anything more than that.
Just to quickly jump back to the power supply thing is that one thing to note as part of the thin ITX specification that this does in some part comply to is that not only does it have LVDS to control your LCD panel, it's also got LED backlight controller. So you could have a HD Plex or similar power in this board internally as that powers the monitor completely.
Oh, wow.
So you could have a monitor that is a dock that you have one plug going into
Yeah.
and a Thunderbolt, and that's it.
I mean, if you're getting like really creative here, you could even probably incorporate a battery into this somehow.
Oh yeah, 19 volts, not hard to do.
Yeah.
So you could have almost a portable Thunderbolt dock that has all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic for creatives. It's
I wouldn't even considered that because of the fact that it powers the. Oh wow!
Yeah, I would have killed for that at this event. I've been doing video editing on a 1366 768 laptop.
No, it's such a great example. Yeah. Oh man!
Imagine being on the show floor at Nangang and needing to get a video out straight away, and you've got this battery-powered, say, I don't know, 20 or 22-inch LCD that's portable.
Yeah.
You just plug Thunderbolt in, power it up, it charges you, tops up to your laptop while you're there, and you're video editing on this big screen at a high resolution, powered by discrete graphics that can, like OpenGL support, like encoding and stuff like that.
Is this the official SFF editing workstation now?
So who's going to build this for me?
Yeah. No, but seriously, right? I mean, because like, what would you need? You'd need like what DNA4 Encase or whatever, but like or a laptop and an eGPU solution. Like you could actually get it like sub 5.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely like a competitor to those types of solutions.
Yeah. I mean, was it the first year we were here? A couple of us bought S4 minis and a screen, and this would probably be a better solution than that.
Yeah.
Because the portable monitors that have been coming out they're the size of the display on your laptop. They're very small.
Which is not worth your time, really.
Yeah.
Having a 22-inch screen, which will just fit I think a 20-inch screen.
Well, no, I mean even like the 22-inch ones. They're like the same.
Oh, thinness.
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
Yeah. Like a 21-inch screen will fit in a Wii Tactic duffel bag. From my experimentation, and hauling that on a laptop to an event would just be so much easier or so much more performant
than like
and
the
efficient.
full.
I had the choice.
Shoot, you can even fit 2 of those monitors or whatever.
Yeah, and because Thunderbolt, you can daisy chain.
Yeah,
and you can have Crossfire 570s. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I don't know how to work.
I think you'd be able to do that.
I've, as I said, this event I called a. How old did you say this thing was?
I don't know how old this
thing is.
I
think my laptop is about 7 or 8 years old.
It's at least that
Yeah,
old.
because it's Ivy Bridge era. And I'm video editing on this thing. It works fine. I mean, I can export a 6-minute video in 3 minutes. But having the ability to have a large screen, even back in my hotel room that I just plug straight into, would be so good.
Yeah. I mean, definitely a 570 would be an upgrade for this thing.
Well, I think this is a Radeon 7000 series MXM embedded card.
Yeah, but it's like the laptop version of it.
I know.
It's probably...
It's better than what I could have had integrated on the Ivy Bridge, let's be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, is there anything else we want to do to cover this eGPU thing specifically? That and the new boards were obviously kind of the main things out of ASRock's wheelhouse.
I'll probably think of something because I hadn't heard about this before, but that's awesome to me.
Yeah, it's cool shit, as they say. So that would wrap it up for ASRock. I'm trying to think through what other vendors we should discuss before we move on to the awards ceremony section of our podcast. Now that we're 2.5 hours in, these always go far longer than we expect them to.
Well, it's been a while since we've podcasted. We're getting it all out of our system. Mm-hmm. It's also, it's a lot easier to podcast when we're all in the same room as each other.
Yeah, it's easy to just keep the conversation.
Not talking over each other over Discord like the last ones. Need to do this more often.
We do. I miss podcasts.
Oh, I mean, like in the same room kind of thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, hey, I'll be on this side of the planet soon.
Yeah, so. You two will be on the same side.
So we'll come back to this hotel. For no
That's
reason.
Right.
Yeah. On a positive note, at least your time zone's going to be a lot closer to mine.
This is true.
Like 4 hours difference, I can work with that. Not exact
12
opposite.
or 13.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
4 a.m. podcasts are just brutal.
Yeah, that I don't miss.
And I mean, I'm monotonous and boring as normally, but 4 o'clock in the morning, oh boy.
Okay, so what else have we got to look at?
I'm trying to think through. So,
Cooler Master came out with the Concept ITX case. That was pretty cool.
Oh, I hadn't seen this.
Yeah, it's very much a prototype unit. So everyone on the Discord's been mentioning that, it looks like there's no cooling and, it looks limited and stuff like that. Like, you look at the back panel, there's no cutouts for cooling.
Okay.
But it just uses a standard inverted ITX layout, SFX power supply at the front, decent length thing. It's almost like an in case M2.
So this is the front of the case?
This is the back.
Okay.
The front... I shouldn't have done that. The front is... it's got a really cool cutout, like a hex pattern almost.
What are people talking about? There's no ventilation.
That's the motherboard tray that you see there. There's no ventilation. But...
So to paint a picture for folks listening to the recording, it's almost like an inverted M1 layout in a way.
Yeah. It's
about.
I've had an M1 and it feels physically about the same size, which
it definitely looks like it.
Yeah, which is crazy for someone like Cooler Master, whose traditional cases, even their released the Master Case H100 that they've just released, like the ITX case, is fucking massive. And yet their concept case, which apparently according to some other YouTubers is going to be for system integrators, I hope they bring this to market because it offers a good value proposition. Like Cooler Master always offers a relatively good value proposition on these things, and this thing looks good. Like that cutout on the front looks good.
The back of it looks great too. Honestly, they actually put effort into designing the back of it.
Yeah, like it's got tempered glass, of course, and I'm just opening up videos to show these guys the B-roll that I filmed.
The tempered glass on top is a little
Yeah.
silly, but
Yeah.
being able to see the video card like that is cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'll give them that.
Yeah. Boyle brings up you can only see venting on 1 of 6 sides. It's a prototype. It will change as time goes on. I'm sure they figure out that having tempered glass on 2 sides, a flat bottom, nothing on the back, nothing on the front, and 1 vent is
so
going to
weird
cause
that
problems.
it's so weird that they wouldn't just rise it and put holes in the bottom or something.
Yeah, I think it is a relatively early prototype. It looks relatively early in its styling. And even if they do, like, the easy solution to the venting is easily that top bit of glass, raise it up by 2 or 3 millimeters with a couple of standoffs, and you've got an entire vent around the outside, and that's a lot of cooling. So it's interesting that finally, one of the main manufacturers, like Cooler Master,
kind of adopted a popular design.
Cooler Master is massive. Like, they OEM for so many different brands, and they're suddenly like, oh, so the indie community actually knew what the fuck they were doing for so long.
Yeah.
Like,
So is it SFX in the front? Or?
it's SFX in the front.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's a dual slot card, full, by the looks of it, full length, because they've got an ASRock Phantom. I think it's a 580 in there.
Yeah.
2.5-inch drive mounts.
It might not be able to fit like extremely long cards.
Oh, yeah, possibly not, but neither can the end case. Actually, no, the end case can. The end case is pretty good. I think it is actually shorter than the end case.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to tell. Unfortunately,
you clearly can fit a normal video card in there.
Unfortunately, I didn't have my measuring tape with me on the floor. I think I was lending it to Joshua for something
Yes,
else.
that's right.
Yeah. So
My bad, guys.
Yeah.
My bad.
and it was a little big for the calipers, which you were also borrowing. So SFF.Network, we take measuring tools to the show floor.
So did
We're
Cooler
only
Master,
one of each.
did Cooler Master give guidance around? I mean, a prototype, so presumably this is like there's a long road ahead of it if it ever goes to production. But did they indicate like what was coming next for this? Or
No, unfortunately, in my time in the Cooler Master booth, they were too busy dealing with famous YouTubers, so the reps wouldn't even give me the time of day.
Gotcha.
Either way, that sort of nod to designs that have been popular in our community is like, that's pretty awesome to see from such a large manufacturer.
Yeah.
It's
And as I said, Cooler Masters, actually, I would probably consider them to be the largest case manufacturer.
Yeah, I don't have much of a perspective on the relative size of them, so I'll just.
I wonder if the largest case manufacturer is actually like Rosewell, or like.
Oh, dude.
But you could see that being true.
Yeah.
You could see that being true.
I do believe Cooler Master OEMs a lot of those.
No, John's was the OEM for Rosewell.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oof. Sorry, that's second take on John's bow. For those who are wondering, John's bow, razor blades.
I've come really close to getting cases for them a few times.
If you value the integrity of your skin, don't.
Well, I know other brands they OEM for. I probably shouldn't say, but anyway.
Yeah, you've got industry knowledge there. Don't we all? But we're slightly off topic on Cooler Master here. They did have the H100 on display, oversized, fat ass, ATX power supply hanging out the back with a gap. It is based on the Elite 100.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 110? One of the two. It's basically the Elite 100 with a lot of extra plastic on it.
Yeah.
And yet they're quoting small form factor. No, it's not.
They previewed this actually at CES.
Okay.
And we were under NDA at the time, so we weren't allowed to disclose it. But they figured it would be especially relevant to us. They sort of pulled us into a back room in their suite and showed it to us.
Yeah, at least you got to talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, the feedback we gave them was just that, like, yeah, for you guys it's small form factor. For small form factor, it's not really small form factor.
That's a huge.
And when we asked them, the main sticking point for us was this sort of like stubbornness to stick to ATX.
It could be so much smaller with SFX.
And so we asked them, well, why are you doing this? And they were upfront about the fact that they're like, well, we don't want to provide an enclosure where we're not also selling like a power solution for it, right? Cause,
that's right. Cooler Master doesn't have SFX, do they?
Exactly. So that's why I was a little surprised when you mentioned that this prototype, was an SFX.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So that could lead to a Cooler Master SFX, or it could.
Potentially.
Yeah. But it's not hard. It's not hard for a brand like Cooler Master to go and talk to Enhance or Superflower or someone like that and say, we want the 750 platform. Okay, put it in your own case, done.
Yeah.
It's not hard these days to pick up a platform from one of these OEMs.
Yeah.
Enhance, for example, I'm pretty sure the Silverstone
1000 watt. Yeah, I think so too.
As an enhanced platform, and just pay some money, license the platform, they'll make it for you, you put in your own enclosure, done.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be easy enough for them to do it. It's just, and maybe this is a sign of things to come, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a more of an interest or focus.
Jordan does bring up a good good comment. I've had so many Cooler Master power supplies die in the past that I'd be worried if they OEM'd their own.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Like, I had a Flex ATX Cooler Master die about 2 weeks ago.
Damn.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever owned a Cooler Master.
I've had 400 watts die.
I've never had a power supply die.
Oh, really? I've had power supplies die. They're all Cooler Master. I had one that
Maybe
was...
it's that 220 volts that you guys are using.
No, I had a dual socket server board desktop that was under 20 litres, and when you powered it up, the power supply sounded like there was literal sparking going on.
Oh, no.
Oh,
I took it in.
Love that.
Oh, that's sad.
I took it in for RMA. The guy plugged it in. He took it away, plugged it out the back, put a load on it, walked back and handed me a replacement unit. It was that bad. I have quality concerns if they OEM their own power supplies. It's been ongoing.
I guess that's fair.
And the Flex ATX power supply that I had die is a relatively recent product too. They did actually have a proper small form factor, low profile case on the market, and this was the case out of it. And you better open that quietly.
That's quite enough.
Okay, that's quite enough.
I mean,
Be your own podcast.
We're near the end of the show anyways.
I certainly hope so. We're 3 hours in. Is anyone still listening?
2 hours 40.
I don't know. I don't see.
Yeah, just staff at this point, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so I'll fast track this a little bit. Cooler Master also had their G200 and a G400P Master Air Series. There's a little bit of excitement around them. However, in all honesty, from my experience with coolers, and I've done countless cooler reviews, they're just generic coolers.
Yeah.
RGB fans, slim fans, but they just look like the fin spacing isn't even equal on these things.
Yeah.
And they are production units.
Yeah.
From what I could understand. Okay, so that's all for that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through what other...
So that was day 2.
Yeah. No, but the thing is, like 80% of what we were able to see and do really happened in like the first 50% of the conference.
Yeah. Here's more. I've got more pictures. The ITX case.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at this picture. This is a product. This is a consumer, like a production unit, and look at this fin spacing.
Wow.
Yeah. I shared this on Discord, I'm pretty sure, when I came across it. It's a generic medium to low quality Cooler Master cooler. It's almost like a token gesture towards the small form factor guys, because now they're doing this prototype. Is this news? It's a vapor chamber.
For what?
A tower cooler. So for those who are only listening, Cooler Master has a 3D vapor chamber concept, or I think it's actually in production, which is, instead of having heat pipes, it's actually a full-on vapor chamber.
Yeah, like in a U shape, a really tall U shape.
It's like some alien tower thing.
I'm just going to share it into Discord now, assuming I have a smaller edited version of it. One moment, please, for those listening. Sorry for those who are listening after the fact.
So, vapor chamber in like CPU tower cooler is not necessarily common. I mean, I know
especially the vertical vapor chamber, because it's always against the CPU,
right, or
the heat source.
And in a GPU context, I mean...
it's again just flat against the PCB.
Yeah, and NVIDIA at a time... this is going back a little ways, but I remember when they had their sort of like original sort of fancy reference GPU design.
GTX 285 was the first one, I think.
Yeah, that had a vapor chamber cooler design. I mean, they don't do it anymore for any of their GPUs.
Which is interesting.
Especially as the consumption has gone up.
Yeah, and now Cooler Master's coming out with this fancy folded thing.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what they can achieve with this kind of thing. It's just something I haven't seen before.
So what?
It may be relatively old, like it may have been released before this. Like
what's the objective of this cooler? Like
replacing heat pipes.
Okay, so this would be inside of another.
Yeah, so in the picture you can see the tower cooler next to it.
Okay.
Yeah, so instead of having like say 6 heat pipes, it's just a single unit.
Oh.
So in a way, you could see how it spreads the heat more effectively between it, and there's less gaps between the heat, but there's also, I would see, less wicking effect of the vapor, like the fluid inside the vapor chamber.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there's like somehow less contact with the vapor chamber, if that makes sense, between it and the fins.
Oh yeah, because you've got your circular heat pipes versus just a flat.
Yeah, it feels like there's more surface area with the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not.
So like, oh come on, thermal engineering is so easy.
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
We can openly speculate on this with total confidence in our accuracy.
Well, I'll get you to do my CPU cooler reviews from now on.
Oh, great. Look at how I landed myself in that position.
TLDR, I'm not a fan of doing cooler reviews anymore.
I mean, I guess we'll learn more. Like, did they... Well, first off, were they able to say, like, oh, well, we're using this technology because we can
I didn't
demonstrate...
get a chance to talk to the reps.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. They'll sell something and people will test it and we'll find out.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the prototype...
That's the spirit.
Unfortunately, the prototype unit is very much a tall 120mm, 140mm tower, so kind of out of our segment.
Wait, go up a little bit?
Yeah.
Was that like hot swap days on something?
This is also on the... After Cooler Master, I visited Asus store, which just had like generic QNAP clones on display. Asus also had all their mini PCs on display, which are very much business orientated.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I visited Taiwan, which is not of interest to you guys. They did have some small form factor motherboards for the workstations, but they're very generic in layout. The defining factor between, like, for Taiwan and Supermicro very much is the reliability of these units versus, like, they don't have like flashy VRMs or overclocking capacity. They have this will be running in 10 years' time kind of capacity.
I'm kind of surprised I'm not incredibly surprised, but that they have actual CPU sockets rather than soldered on chips.
No, well, they're a server manufacturer, so they've got to cater for all of these things.
So these are server boards?
Yes.
Okay.
Server and workstations. These are proper workstations, not like the stuff you buy down at Best Buy as a workstation. No, these are the ones that you find in high-end workstations. Right. And you've got embedded versions of said things, including embedded things with like 8 RAM slots on micro ATX. I did cover all of these videos all of these boards in my day 3 summary video that's up on our YouTube account. I visited AFOX, which was generic. Blue Jour, I think I'm screwing up the pronunciation of those, had, I believe, then Intel NUC based systems. And they're very aesthetically pleasing. So they're kind of like expanded NUC systems. So they've got like custom cooling systems, more I/O than the normal things.
Okay, that's cool.
But they also offer a passive version. The non-passive version is powered, like, it's got a laptop fan in the bottom. It's a little blower thing.
Yeah. That's how like most of the i7 NUCs are.
Yeah. But you've got a passive version which has no fans in it whatsoever, which is cool. That. I think it's only slightly larger. They've got their Move, which is a higher end kind of system. Ignore the bit clicking. I'm just showing these guys because I don't believe they've seen these. So this is it's a slightly taller mini tower. It's still like really small form factor. So i7 8705G, which is a mobile embedded processor.
With Vega graphics.
Vega M. So mobile, so slightly gumped. Like up to 16 gig, up to 32 gig of memory, a few M.2 drives, 2 gigabit ports. I mean, Thunderbolt 3.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, Thunderbolt 3, and it looks
just hook it into your eGPU, and you've got.
The wording on that card was a little confusing. If you can zoom in on it, it says NVMe PCIe 250 gigabyte or 500 gigabyte up to.
So this is a pre-built system that they offer. So
they stock it.
They will stock the 250 gig and the 500 gig, but you could personally upgrade it up to 2 terabyte drives. So they're very stylistically designed. They've got, once again, the cool stamping that we were talking about earlier in Silverstone. Yeah. It's powder coated. It's got a lot of front I/O.
Oh, that chassis is metal?
That's metal.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you get going back to the previous one, which is called the Cub KUBB. There's a whole lot of different customization options like painting, screen printing. Like they had had some really cool screen prints on display. They're very much designed for the artist and the creator. So you had wood, you had like a 3D printed or a carved appearance, anodized aluminium, Even the Move, which is the slightly larger version, has a rose gold version for the
Of
Apple
course.
fans, and it's a very, very shiny chrome version for the other people. They did have some other NUC-based products on display, but they're as interesting.
I mean, they look great.
Yeah, they're
aesthetically.
really good. Like, they very much focused on aesthetics.
Yeah.
Like, the performance was there. They were, like, mostly Core i3, Core i5 mobile.
Yeah.
Like, your standard NUC-based platform. But
Which, for a lot of people, that's all the computer that they need.
yeah, especially for creators. Like, these are the kind of system that a painter or a photographer will have sitting on their thing.
So Jordan, the public Discord, is asking if we have any commentary on these gigantic in-wind chassis that look like a disease. No. Moving on.
I did think their other case was pretty cool. I saw like the plastic frame that has fabric over it.
Oh yeah, there was.
Oh, I saw. I thought that was a little weird. I understood what
weird.
I understood what they were going for. Maybe it's just because it's so different that I didn't know what to think about it.
But it was also next to the looks like a disease.
Yeah.
Yeah, the alien egg. I have
Space eggs. Yeah.
Space eggs.
Yeah, I have what's
Embryonic life form PC.
I have what's called tryptophobia, which I'm sure if you Google it, you'll really clearly understand what that is. And those things made me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, man, there was just some weird concepts.
It
was like bizarre. It was like
known for that.
computer enclosure bizarro
Something
land.
weird. Last year was the giant orb, like the big thing. Which, funnily enough, I saw at another booth as a demo system this year.
Oh,
The
really?
giant plastic orb was someone else's demo system this year.
Really?
I don't remember what it was, but
But yeah, I
And
do
when-
like their. It's like a plastic ATX chassis that's like $40. I think they're quoted
yeah, it's
at.
covered
It's
in
like
fabric.
milk
And-
crates and fabric.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just put fabric around it as like the
Yeah.
panels of it.
I don't know. I mean, $40. Yeah. There's an
I mean, you compare it to like the Geek
right.
Yeah.
chassis. It's like
Oh, those things are
It's fair.
interesting.
I mean, I think it's like kind of a perception thing almost, right? Like,
yeah.
because you can get like a competent, fine metal enclosure for like $40.
But I do think like it has a unique aesthetic,
Mhm.
and it is like more compatible with like most people's home decor
Mhm.
than like your typical $40
Yeah.
case.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess what I would say is I'm a more fan of the idea than the execution.
Sure,
I'm
yeah.
pleased someone is trying, though. Like,
Mhm.
they're not just putting out a generic black case year after year after year, and one's throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
And I
Mhm.
do like that effectively like the fabric is just a breathable mesh
Yeah.
around your
And
case.
it's a filter.
Yeah, that filters dust functionally.
Yeah. And
It's
you
just
can
like it's so practical that
and
I
you can
like
actually you can peel it off and wash it in a washing machine by the looks of it, which is
Yeah.
a lot better than most of the fan filters you can.
That's how you clean. Yeah.
it. Let
That's
me
fair.
wash my case.
Let me wash my
Yeah,
computer.
what if Yeah, you have a whole lot of like, just say you live in a house with smokers, you'd be able to wash your fan filters,
Yeah,
or
Mhm.
pets, especially pets.
yeah.
Pets are really bad on fan filters. They clog the crap out of them, and this thing is once a week you could wash the filter on the outside of this case.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that's a pretty like interesting little like plus of this type of design.
Yeah, for sure.
It would be interesting. I hope they take it smaller, like in an A1 style, like
Yeah,
size.
yeah, of course I'd like a smaller one.
Because the other thing it opens up, if you know the right person, you could probably get something screen printed
Yeah.
or tie dye it.
I mean also
Hippies.
you could just sew your own cover for it. Like it would be the simplest sewing project to
Yeah.
just make a tube of fabric.
Yeah.
You know, one seam.
Well, I could
and
imagine
you're
someone
done.
doing a leather version, like a cream leather with a wood top or something like that.
Yeah.
That's more luxurious than I'm imagining for my $40 case, but
Yeah.
You know what this is reminding me of though? Remember when we did this is like historical times, but remember we did the SFF build competition?
Oh yeah.
And the very first one was like a budget build. And so, of course, the thing you struggle with is the enclosure.
uh-huh.
And I don't even remember what you or I selected because we selected, enclosures.
Generic cheap enclosures.
Generic
I think
cheap
Bros will
enclosures
kill
that
you.
wouldn't kill you. And
depending on how thoroughly you built on them.
yeah, that's fair. And then James was like, well, you have all this cardboard from all the parts you just bought.
I like where this is going.
You just buy a roll of duct tape and it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
I'm pretty sure I disqualified him on the spot.
So in a way, it's, I guess it'd be harder to go much more budget than that, but because here's what I will say: the one piece of praise I'll give this, and do they have a name for this design? I forget.
I don't
I think it was Alice.
Yeah, it was like some friendly name or something.
Yeah, I think it is designed to almost be a kid's PC kind of thing.
Yeah, like if they charged, I don't know, $20, $30, maybe even $40 for it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, a nice version of that would probably be more appealing to me than like, a real budget, like metal, traditional stamped enclosure.
Yeah.
For sure.
On a positive note, in a kid's room, if you got RGB lighting inside the case, it could make a good table lamp.
I think the case actually has like I forget what it's called, but like a threaded socket for a light bulb in it.
Oh yeah, throw a 100-watt light bulb inside a computer case.
I mean, or an LED light bulb.
I know.
Or an RGB LED light bulb.
A Philips Hue.
Yeah. The Philips Hue's not budget though.
Yeah.
No, that completely defeats the value proposition.
I just imagine some person who's less technically inclined throwing a 60-watt light bulb inside that and just melting stuff.
You have the Yeelight, which is I think like $20
For a single light bulb.
Yeah.
Whew.
It's not like it's really good value if you want a smart light bulb.
Yeah.
Okay. Onwards and upwards.
Yes.
And smaller.
Are there any other vendors we should...
Supermicro had a small form factor desktop on display. It was a modular design, so you had a GPU section. The display model, going by photos from other sources because I was unable to get Supermicro to talk to me. Story of my life. They had a Noctua NHL9i cooler in it. It was pretty much a generic workstation based on their ITX board, but it was in a sandwich form factor, so back to back.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
It was modular, so if you didn't want the discrete GPU, you could just run the case. The styling was really interesting because it was very similar to... have you seen the Salvo Studios S401?
I know I've seen it, but
which is
I'm not picturing it.
It's kind of like almost C-section the whole way around, and then two flat panels, and it's hex kind of.
Okay, yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, the styling and the design of it was very similar, which is interesting because either great minds think alike, or the more manufacturers are taking hints from our community.
And I think both of those things are exciting, like whichever one of those it is.
Yeah. Keep them moving. More motherboards. Again, Supermicro, I had a look at all their things, including really cool embedded boards. Obviously, these are the kind of things you're not going to find at Newegg or Best Buy. These are things that got MAQ in the thousands.
Yeah. I mean, you might be able to find the odd reseller, or
you'll find it used on eBay in about 3 years' time. At the Alpha Cool booth, I went back. There was a mini STX build with water cooling inside. That was built inside something about the same size and style as the Threadripper box. So I'll just quickly bring this up for the guys here. So
I saw this.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it's
cool.
a mini STX A300 board, I believe, inside something that is only slightly larger. I think it was done by BS Mods.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've got a picture of the other side there.
I like that.
Yeah. So it was an interesting little thing. Stood out. They didn't really push it much though. There wasn't any flashy stuff around it. It was just kind of sitting there. ECS had their Levis products on display, which are much of muchness. They're the same. I visited Orico, who do peripherals, very available in New Zealand and Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I visited them because they were offering me review units of USB Type-C M.2 enclosures that can do up to 10 gigabit.
Neat.
So, and cool, relatively cool styling as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know the ones that I showed you, the clear one?
Yeah.
The heatsink is not only available in black, but it's also blue, silver, and red.
Oh,
so
interesting.
just your standard anodization colors.
Yeah.
And the aluminium one, it's a full shell of aluminium, is available in silver as well.
Nice.
And they are on the market, $36 US off
That's
Newegg.
very reasonable.
Yeah, for an M.2 enclosure of USB Type-C that can do 10 gigabit, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a super thumb drive.
Yeah,
almost,
yeah. It's a thumb drive. You put a decent sized M.2 SSD and like a Samsung 970 Evo in there.
Yeah.
And you've got...
And you can get... I mean, there's some good economical options out there.
Yeah,
too.
there's
You just need
economical options.
capacity.
So, say you could throw in a cheap... Because it's NVMe only. But you could throw in a cheap NVMe drive, or you could throw in a high-end one. You've got basically a flash drive that you can edit video off.
Yeah, that's nice.
because it's Type C, it's also compatible with, like, you could probably plug your phone into it, and stuff like that. What else was there? MSI had their what was it called? Their Prestige series on display, which is basically their Trident in a fancier, like a more subtle case. Came across iStar USA's booth, who probably not well known to the small form factor community, but this was interesting for me as someone who does SFF workshop and I do server stuff. Woodfront server cases, Woodfront hot swap drives, and most interestingly, a rack mount. I believe it was 3U, passively cooled.
Yes, you mentioned this earlier.
Yeah, so this is an
AV Geek's dream.
An AV Geek's dream. So this is, it's got space at the front for like an optical drive and 2 3.5-inch drives, but this is a completely passively cooled case.
Yep.
That will take a normal CPU, a graphics card, and this will fit in your normal server rack or your AV rack. And that's the thing, a lot of the AV people, they have a lot of rack-mounted gear, so their high-end amplifiers and receivers and stuff like that are rack-mounted.
Yep.
And this thing mounts into your rack and is silent.
That's really nice.
Which is, and it looks cool. It kind of looks almost Straycom-ish in design.
Yeah, so just to paint a picture for folks who are listening, imagine like a traditional 3U rack mount, and then it has essentially these blocks that are attached to heat pipes. One for the CPU, one for the GPU, that go on opposite sides on the left and right, sort of flanking the entire system. And then, basically imagine like 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches of that width on either side being used just so it can disperse the heat collected from those heat pipes into the fins.
Yeah, it's definitely a mini ITX case, and it's relatively short depth as well, which is really handy for those of us with short depth. It's designed for DC in, which a lot of AV racks have DC available anyway. So I think it's a really cool thing. I didn't expect that kind of thing would exist, because generally racks are designed for high airflow, high noise, who gives a crap.
Yeah.
Or AV racks is generally you're going to have a tower next to it for your storage server. So this would be perfect for something like Plex.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What else do we have? I pronounce it wrong, but it's like Abcon Core or Abco Core. That is 750 and a 500 watt SFX power supply on display. They kind of look like the generic base from Enhance or whoever. Yeah. There's nothing really exciting about them. It's great that there's more on the market. This probably drive the prices down for those who want the higher things.
Options are good.
And finally, we just had a quick preview, like in person, of the Monster Labo case, which looks as good in person as it does in the photos. So that was it for day 3. Day 4, basically, I wandered around the mainland China kind of cross-strait exhibition and found some interesting stuff, but nothing really worth covering. So that's Computex.
That's Computex.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah.
There's your incredibly high-level, very brief summary. We're
currently at just over 3 hours of talking about it.
And we're not quite done yet.
We're not quite done yet. We have one more section. I almost consider it to be the most important section.
Yes.
Let's be
It's
real.
clearly the most prestigious part.
Yes.
So keep in mind that these aren't physical.
These are not physical awards.
Or official.
They're awards in spirit.
Yep.
And, I'm just so excited to be able to announce the first ever annual SFFN Computex Award of the Year award ceremony.
Yeah, Award of the Year,
That's a work in progress.
we're still working on the name, I'm sorry.
We've spent literally minutes putting together a series of categories for this ceremony. And just to walk you guys sort of through the reasoning, the start of this was a joke, and then we took the joke further and further, and then we decided,
as we do,
you know what, we should make a podcast segment out of this, as you do. And so we have a few categories, some great, some less great, just to sort of encapsulate, summarize, express the highs, the lows, the mediums of our time at Computex 2019. So to kick it off, we would first like to debate and bestow our award for the biggest disappointment of Computex 2019. I want to start with a negative so that we can end on a positive note.
Yep.
So biggest disappointment, guys.
That's a hard one because there were so many. There were so many. Intel's keynote, Nvidia's keynote,
Yeah.
the Asus Mini GTX board.
See,
Like,
until we saw the Impact, I was like, I know what I would pick for this. But then we saw the Impact, and I'm like, on principle alone, this one just hurts.
Yeah, I'm my personal opinion, I'm calling it as the Impact.
Because like for me it was between that and like initially I was thinking, oh, well it's really going to be like the relative lacklusterness of Nvidia or Intel.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, at least Nvidia like in a healthy number of areas like still is the best solution.
Yeah.
So it's like they lack the urgency to respond to AMD that Intel clearly has, and Intel isn't responding to AMD. So it's very easy to go like, oh, well you guys are kind of like you've lost the plot here.
Yeah.
But the Impact, it's just like, it's so relevant to SFF. They've done so well in the past. And this is just such a befuddling and confusing entry in the series, especially against all these other friggin' great options.
What would your call be?
I mean, I'm pretty much going to have to go with that as well.
Okay, so the winner...
I did have an expectation that Intel would at least like talk about discrete GPUs since it's been like made very clear that they care about this thing, and they've like more or less poached employees to make this happen. Yeah. And there's still nothing to show for it. That's weird to me, and like it felt silent to me, but it doesn't compare at all to the...
Okay, so the official winner of the most disappointing award is the Asus Impact 8.
Absolutely. I expected a lot more debate around that one, but golf claps, everyone, golf claps. Well done, Issa.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
The next award, which I almost consider of tantamount importance to the biggest disappointment, is the SFFN Most RGB Award. The Most RGB Award. Needless to say, there were many entrants into this category.
Yeah, I don't even know how to like cut down the competition here.
So I think most RGB may even be a misnomer, more like the most ridiculous use of RGB. Maybe that should be the official title. So
why?
Obviously, RGB in general is unnecessary, garish, leads to overpricing, all the negative things we already know and love and appreciate about RGB, or know and hate and don't at all appreciate about RGB. But of course, innovation is paramount. Companies the world over are trying their best to find ways to fit RGB into places where RGB has no business in being to begin with. And there was one particular thing that I think John and I can assuredly agree on was the most egregious example of RGB in consumer tech. John?
I only grabbed a single snap of this because I almost had to run away from this bomb side of an idea. So Archgon, a brand I've never heard of, advertising the world's first RGB portable SSD. Why?
Oh man, I love it.
So you're going to be sitting at Starbucks writing your thesis or doing something like that, and you've got this shiny, flashy pile of crap hanging on the side of your laptop.
The creator on a go.
So for the creator on the go who suddenly decides that they need to like show off to the world that they have no taste.
I'm just like imagining like, well, I'm never in a Starbucks anywhere, like a Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, but like getting my coffee, like I'm just minding my own business, and just, you can imagine the sort of person that'll like pull out their Alienware laptop and then foist this just ridiculous, garish monstrosity, plug it into their computer, and just a flood of multicolored lights emitting from their friggin' peripheral.
My retinas, my poor retinas.
I mean, I'm reminded of, there was a 2.5-inch solid-state drive that came out recently that, like, literally didn't work because it had so many RGB LEDs.
Yeah, overheated.
Yeah. And, like, I can't imagine that happening with this because it's an enclosure. But, like, I'm just expecting that to happen, even though it doesn't make sense that it would happen here. It's just like, it's too bright for your SSD to work.
So 2 in a row, the Y Awards.
Oh man! All right, so
next up,
that's decided. Wow, we're having a consensus.
We're a lot more efficient on this than we were on the rest of the podcast.
No kidding. So for the next one, needless to say, lots of announcements and developments, lots of products and whatnot. That's the whole point of Computex. But we're human. We're here to report and do all the interesting things and let you guys know what's going on and to march on the ground and get the information that we can. But we also are here to have a good time and have fun and enjoy Taipei. It's a wonderful city. And so we, have nights out in the town, grab food and drinks, really enjoy ourselves. This is an award that I enter in for consideration and actually would really like to call out John's influence in introducing this. I'm pleased to say, I'm not even going to allow this for discussion, like this has already been decided, that the John Morrison Award for beer most likely to give us a hangover is Taiwan beer. Yes, Taiwan beer. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
The only beer in the last decade that has given me a headache in the morning. I had 2 cans. 2 cans and it gave me a hangover.
How big were the cans?
They were 440 mil. Like,
yeah.
I had five. Last night I had 5 cans of Asahi.
And you were
this morning
fine.
I woke up fine. 2 cans of Taiwan beer.
For anyone who hasn't had it, Taiwan beer is your, I don't know, you know how every region has their Budweiser, right? They're
it's definitely the
cheap,
most popular beer,
generic, very
So,
easy to drink, watered down
Foster's
beer.
for the Australian viewers. Waikato Draft for the New Zealand viewers.
Yeah.
Listeners, sorry.
So Taiwan beer, it's literally called Taiwan beer.
Yeah.
is the beer.
Newcastle Brown for the British people.
So easy to get pretty much anywhere, dirt cheap, drinks fine.
It's
It
hard
ta-
to go to a place that doesn't.
Yeah,
so-
it tastes good when it's cold, but my God, in the morning, do you regret it?
I don't have the same experience for what it's worth. This is John's award, not
This is-
mine.
that's-
I don't want to
well-
steal his thunder.
Yeah, Victoria Bitter is probably a better comparison. Jordan's right. But I drink occasionally, a little more than occasionally, and I'm usually pretty good when it comes to the morning. I can
You can hold your
I can hold my liquor, but
It's all right. It's all right. You don't have to drink it anymore.
day 2 of the show, I suffered significantly, and I think it showed in my review, my coverage of the Asus boards.
Mm-hmm. Only accentuated the
Yeah,
frustration.
I mean, they had it coming to them. It's the bit, I hate to say it, but it's like the Bitfinex prodigy of this generation. And those who know me know exactly what I'm talking about.
What high accolades you're bestowing.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move on. We're going to shift sort of to not necessarily positive, not necessarily negative, could go either way. Our next award category is the most unexpected. Okay. So consider your expectations, what you thought was going to happen going in, then what actually happened, So it could be it beat your expectations. It could be it was below your expectations,
It's a hard one for me because AMD beat my expectations on releasing Navi when they did.
Mm-hmm.
Ryzen 3, we had enough leaks that it was about expected.
Yeah. I'm still really surprised by their claimed IPC games.
15% is pretty good. There was, I don't know,
The ASRock Thunderbolt 3 ITX board was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It surprised me the fact that they got Thunderbolt 3 on an AMD platform.
Yeah.
But personally, me as a server geek, it was that passive case, that
Yeah.
passive rack mount.
I think that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't expect to see that kind of thing. It's I know HDPlex and Straycom kind of have similar products, but they're not rack mount. You put it on a shelf in your rack kind of thing.
Yeah.
But actually having a rack mountable, 19-inch rack compatible case that is designed to run in your AV rack or even in your home lab, just blew me away.
Instead of having huge server fans going in your closet. Or
I have a quiet server rack, but it can be quieter.
It can
always be quieter.
I can always be quieter. And a couple of these, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, iStar USA.
Yeah, I don't think anybody walks by their server rack and is like, "Oh, this coil whine is killing me."
I do.
Really?
My server rack is in my office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
That's why my most recent project on the SFF workshop was a quiet 1U server.
Okay.
Which amusingly is quieter than my 2U server, which has Noctua fans in it.
Yeah.
So that's saying something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree. this is a great example of a product where it's like before it exists, you wouldn't even think that it would need to exist or should exist, and then now that the idea is there and it's a thing, you're like, oh yeah, like this is pretty great. Like all sorts of people could really appreciate having this as an option.
Because the other side of it wouldn't look that bad sitting on your shelf. You just take off the handles.
Yeah. No, I mean it's thoughtful, it's well rounded, it solves a meaningful problem.
Yeah.
All sorts of people that use.
So
this
are you like agreeing with him that it's?
I am. I submit that the most unexpected award.
Okay, well I'm voted out here, but the thing that I'm most surprised by is the sort of eGPU alternative that ASRock has.
I know it's so This is true.
It's been one of those years where some of the SFF products have just been mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like last year was kind of mediocre when it came to Computex for SFF.
Mm-hmm.
This year, however, there's been a few products that are just utterly amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, Computex last year was kind of tame.
It was RGB and nothing else.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here.
Well, I mean, we literally just made up the ceremony. We could just award both, right? Why not?
It's a tie.
It's a tie.
Wow.
Yeah, we did it.
ASRock getting streak on.
That wasn't Stroke, it was iStar USA.
And iStar USA.
Wow.
Who does the budget server cases on
Okay, maybe that is more unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
The design is very Streetcom. Yeah.
The design is very
It is.
Straycom.
Yeah.
Which is the inspiration I think was there. It's just I blew my mind when I walked past and I saw so many heat pipes and no vent. It's like,
So does it have the solution of like you adding your own heat pipes between? Okay.
and the heat pipes are a lot more than what you see in an HD Plex solution as well.
Yeah.
I'll just pop up another picture of it for Alex to have a look
Yeah,
at.
I was away whenever you guys were talking about that.
Yeah, so you've got... Here's a good picture
Okay,
here.
cool.
So the CPU is cooled by 6 heat pipes. And the GPU, or I think it's probably a sound card or whatever in that regard. It's 2 heat pipes.
Really neat.
But you could probably fit 4 or 6 or 8 because there are so many.
Yeah, look at how wide that block is.
Yeah, I don't know if I got a good picture of it, but the amount of slots you have for the heat pipes for height and everything.
I like that design.
It's super cool.
They thought about it. They made it. they made it customizable. They made it flexible in something that you wouldn't expect to exist.
Yeah.
I'm just going to dump all of. So
Don't do that.
Oh, you're going to show him.
Jordan said that I haven't posted any pictures, so I'm going to dump a whole lot in.
Will Discord let you do that?
Well,
I kind of hope not.
To be honest, the problem is I don't think I edited these to shrink them down, so I don't think it's possible. 1 second. Was it day 2 or day 3? It was day 3, wasn't it? Edit, show, edits. Ignore the man behind the curtain.
Well, I can go ahead and while you're uploading those photos, we have
Actually, I have, if I can find them.
we have 2 more categories.
Okay.
So we're gonna shift to the more positive categories. The first one of which is the most exciting. What is the most exciting thing?
Oh man, I feel like I already used my answer.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know what it is for myself personally, but
Go ahead.
I want to contemplate a little bit, so fill me in with some time.
So for me, I just think that the ITX board that ASRock shared is just the bee's knees. Like, I think it's just great.
Yeah.
It's well-rounded, it's thoughtful, Thunderbolt's a sick feature. I mean, even just the dumb stuff like, the cleverness of having the IO shield be the heatsink and made entirely of metal and stuff like that. Like, and in part, it's like the feature set, in part, it's just being able to, talk with the ASRock reps, including the lead guy for this specific project who, really worked to resolve a lot of the engineering challenges around of it. And just the thoughtfulness and the enthusiasm came through real strong. And
It was built, though, let's be honest.
Yeah. But, and the other thing, too, is it's just like, I obviously hope to finally build myself a desktop at some point. And, with all...
How long have we run this website and you haven't had a desktop?
Nah, don't get me started. But, I'm fairly convinced that, my next build is going to be, a Ryzen chip in this motherboard.
Yeah.
It ticks all the boxes. It's just so well done. And so that makes it easy for me to pick as the thing that I'm most excited about, because I'm most excited to see how I get to use it, for myself.
I mean, I definitely feel a lot of that sentiment, so I'm inclined to agree with you.
I'm going to be the standout on this one.
Well, what I was gonna say is the 570 like external board. I'm really impressed by that thing.
Yeah.
Either way, like whichever one I choose, like ASRock is like winning for me in this case.
Should we go for best product or best brand?
I was going to say, maybe the most exciting is ASRock as an institution.
Yeah.
But the thing is, my suggestion was actually going to be
at?
Ryzen 9 3900X.
Okay.
12 cores, it's making
That's a
low-end
good choice.
HDT obsolete.
That's
a good choice.
At 105 watts.
I mean, I am really excited about that too, so it's fair.
And in conjunction with that, the 65 watt 3700X. This is an octa-core processor that fits in, that can run an S4 Mini.
Oh my god, I haven't even thought about that.
Or a Desmini, like an AMD Desmini GTX.
Ooh.
Yeah. This is like workstation on the go level.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like 65 watts. Yeah, that's base, like at base clocks, yada yada. But
Well, for context, the final category, the category after this, is going to be best in show. So
I think this one should be the Ryzen chip because I think ASRock should be best in show.
ooh, okay, all right. So
Okay.
what it sounds like we want to do is we want to say that the most exciting are the Ryzen 3000 series CPUs, such that we can say overall best in show is ASRock.
The overall best in show is ASRock, and the ability for them to innovate where all of the other manufacturers are just saying,
we'll check the boxes.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll just cover RGB, we'll cover gamer, we'll cover this, that, we'll cover that. Whereas you've got ASRock who's like,
Let's add Thunderbolt.
AMD Thunderbolt.
Yeah, fuck it. We're gonna...
Again, it's ASRock doing what they do best. X290 EITX, X9090 EITX, Desmini GTX, Desmini A300, AMD, and AMD, ASRock and small form factors. Like, let's see what works. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's see what it's Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, and all the other brands. Their Halo products are like full ATX boards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
ASRock's Halo products are all small form factor.
Yeah.
And I appreciate them for that.
No, I mean, it's hard to find a brand holistically that's been more impactful or a bigger advocate for the principles of SFF.
Maybe Silverstone as well, but I would still nominate ASRock being the winner of this particular one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like we're in agreement, so I think, we can just say congratulations.
ASRock.
ASRock. And AMD, of course.
Yeah.
All right.
Sponsor.
Yes, I think we should probably wrap up. We'll obviously be doing a bit more conversation in the after show, answering questions, all that fun stuff. But once again, I just want to take a second to thank Silverstone. They sponsored our coverage, not just for this year, but for previous years. And, they've just been a great, important partner in SFF from the very beginning of their SFX and SFXL line to the fact that they've had a variety of small form factor enclosures for a heck of a long time now. I've done a number of builds for myself and for my friends in a lot of their enclosures, including their Sugo series. To learn more, just go to Silverstone Tech, TEK.com, about their latest developments. Obviously, we have all sorts of reporting on everything from their 1,000 kilowatt.
1 kilowatt. You can use the term kilowatt here.
Kilowatt SFXL power supply to their expanding selection of enclosures and such. Thanks once again to Silverstone for their ongoing support of our Computex coverage. And thank you all for listening. For those who tuned in live, we really appreciate it. Obviously, stick around if you're tuned in live for the after show, given that our podcast was a show after the show.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer those. But thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks. It's been great to podcast again. We're going to look at probably doing more of these.
Absolutely.
Especially with time zones changing for certain people very soon.
Yeah.
And we'll be available on the forum as usual. And obviously this Discord's going to be staying open for forever.
Yep.
So obviously we've got the public channel here. Feel free to ask questions. I'm in here most times outside of work. Same with a few of the other guys. Follow the social media. We've got Instagram, we've got YouTube, we've got Twitter for both SFF.Network and SFF Workshop, which I have to mention. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, SFF Workshop is my side project where I work on stuff like servers, home DIY stuff, I've got some interesting projects coming up that'll be not completely SFF related, but still quite cool. Alexander, you got anything to add?
I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for sticking out with us, guys. And yeah, hopefully I'll be getting more involved with the site and making some content for you guys.
Awesome.
Thanks once again. Have a nice one, guys.